Hi everyone, just a quick one before we start today. So I know you guys are probably a bit tired of hearing this, but we've just rejigged our Patreon, and I'd really love it if you could just head on over to patreon.com.
Hey guys, welcome to a new winter Cults and Culture.
You'll see that
I'm Sam, and here with me today is our very special guest, Gary Butterfield. Hi Gary.
Well,
Hello.
I'll now start putting up 2 extra episodes a month.
And
the next
today we're going to be talking about
Tron
Dark
and
Souls
Tron Legacy.
2.
I'm super excited to be delving
Gary
into
is
it again.
from Butterfield TV.
Sign up now so
he's
you
got
don't miss
multiple
out.
podcasts.
We'll also start putting up episodes
how I was
a full
first
week
made
earlier
aware of
than
his
the
work
general
was
public.
through
So
Bonfireside
check it
Chat,
out. There's a link in the
which
show notes.
I actually listened to after reading about it in that Dark Souls book, You Died, which you and your co-host Cole were interviewed for, I believe.
Let's sit down.
Yeah, Jason Killingsworth and Keza McDonald, I believe.
Yeah, I love the fact he's called Killingsworth.
It's a great name. That guy is great. I like just throwing that out there as one of the nicest dudes.
But yeah, that's how I found out about Bonfireside Chat. And for people that don't know, it's a podcast basically dedicated to Dark Souls and Souls-like games. So basically, you're the expert here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I do my best.
Have I described that correctly, would you say? Was that a good elevator pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had to, the games did not.
Hey guys, welcome to
the initial
Cults and Culture.
kind of
today,
conceit for the
we're
show.
Be talking about 2019
was doing it
American
as a travel guide almost
and directed by
to
Jordan
these games
Peele,
because Cole is my co-host on that show.
Lupita
we're both
Nyong'o,
really struck by in Dark Souls 1 how it felt like every
Winston
area
Duke,
had a very strong
both
thesis
of which you might remember, Black Panther
to it. Or kind of gimmick to it.
Wright Joseph,
and then
Evan, Alex,
we did that
Elizabeth
at the time.
Moss,
We had
Tim
Demon Souls to go
Heidecker,
back to. Dark Souls 2 came out, and then we had to kind of start covering other things
Tim
in between games. So we covered influences and antecedents,
Mad Men,
or games that either came before, came after, either buy from or not. That took some of the design philosophy.
$1 million worldwide,
and generally pretty accurate. We limit it to things that have at least a little bit in common with Dark Souls, and that can be a little bit of a stretch,
mirror image,
depending on honestly, if we think we have something to say about it.
So you may have already read about the
between games. At one point, we covered Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight is not a Souls-like. There are some kind of mechanics as far as the risk reward with when you die.
A little bit more light. So if you feel you figured out
your resources, but we just wanted to talk about Shovel Knight because we loved it. So we decided to stretch the rules a little bit in that case.
Yeah, I bought Demon Souls on the advice of a friend way back in the day, and I got rid of all my PS3 games, and my PS3 actually had the fan got screwed up, and I had to replace the fan, so because it was opened, no one would take it. And I was like, I'm going to keep it. And the only
the film begins by telling us how under America
Demon Souls,
there are lots of tunnels, some we don't know before.
Is a Demon Souls machine.
It begins with this
dedicated piece of hardware.
Really? And also, but
I haven't played it yet.
I've still got
any room to do it.
The next
scene
is an 80s old school TV.
Dark Souls 1, 2, 3.
You can see a little girl
back and do Demon Souls
in the reflection.
Bloodborne.
Reflection,
some kind of
being
hovering
very
around,
important, by the way, which we'll come to. On the screen is a Hands Across America advert showing people from all races across the states holding hands for this charity
because I've got my audience base is mostly American.
Up next to the TV, which is
are there any burning questions about British colloquialisms that you would like being cleared up? It's only because I remember I was listening to your podcast and I heard Cole,
she walks around with
and he seems to say this a lot.
You may notice the shots are taken from
he used this expression, tossed it off,
as if from the child's perspective.
And also it really makes me laugh. I think he drew attention to it at one point.
What is he saying? What is
light in front of them? So essentially, if you could say that you're watching them from the shadows.
If you've tossed it off, it could be similar to saying,
"This is quite important."
Cracked one out. Which could be,
little girl's
which is like masturbator.
Wins a Michael Jackson Thriller t-shirt.
I will be.
And the mum is worried that this will give her nightmares.
If you're saying, which makes it funny because it's like
has actually spoken
of the use of the word. Let's say it. So usually it'd be like I toss myself off
in the movie. Tossing
it off sounds like you've got
character
like
within Thriller.
Some kind of like Lovecraftian
dancing
addict.
zombie. And the fact
that you see your penis as a separate entity.
Sure, some kind of dissociative thing, which like ties into the theme of what we're talking about.
Still a monster due to his like.
But I like the biggest. Sorry,
what a twist.
The biggest piece of British slang that was news to me recently that I remember is someone I think on Twitter told me that something made them squeaky bum.
Almost everyone,
or had like squeaky bum, and I was like, what does that mean? And it wasn't I just asked and found out. But
you also noticed
that to my ears sounded very strange. And now I understand.
A very kind of strange thing.
It's what I seem to. That means nervous, basically, like apprehensive. Let's say.
Watching it, that are remembering.
But that's quite like. That's something that
it's like lots of
not my mum, but like
teenagers.
It's not like it's not something that people
one guy with a sign saying
use every day.
11,
really, I don't think.
Which we'll come on to
maybe.
As well. So she seems to be drawn down. He steps to the beach, looking up to the sea.
I say that all the time. I'll be like, okay, we're just around me and my friends
before a sudden downpour of rain.
Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, it was a bit squeaky bum time.
So it's quite ominous.
Yeah, it just. Surely, even if you know the slang, you can see how if you don't know what that means, just squeaky bum time sounds like a
dark,
something dirty but vague. Like I don't know precisely what it'd be referring to, but it just has kind of the cadence of something dirty to me.
It's also the idea of thunder and lightning, like an angry god. Maybe
when I think about it, it doesn't even really like
coincidences
make sense. I think the idea is that you've pooed yourself or you've done a particularly high-pitched fart.
You may notice that the face atop the
that's the way it was
is a Native
explained to me, is that you're so tense.
There's a sign saying "Find yourself"
if you were to fart, that it would be really high pitched because you're so tense. So that's how it's explained to me.
That's actually perfect. It's one of those things where I've never actually had to think about.
She tries to head towards the exit, but she becomes all jumbled up. And
so after that, that's good. And if there's any other British sayings that people want cleared up, then feel free to
being a bit of a motif
us.
Something that I'll come on to in a bit.
So tell us a little bit about your relationship with Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2, and
cut to the eye
how you got into it.
So this is the title sequence.
Why it maybe has a special place in your heart. Why you dedicated a whole podcast to it. Really,
different cages against the wall. And then
so,
what looks like.
I do another show. The flagship show on our network is called Watch Out for Fireballs.
Then cut to the present day.
It's a show, like a Games Club podcast that me and Cole
bickering,
do.
Chatting.
Cole had taken his second run at Dark Souls. He did a first run of it and really didn't like it. We've taken a second run, and I think this is a very common experience where it clicks for people.
About the fact
people, it takes a few times to get to it. So he's like, hey, trust me. I think you'd really like this if you gave it a shot. So I started playing it. And in between the marginalia of the flagship show, which was not about Dark Souls, we would still talk about it.
The daughter discusses about how she isn't that bothered
compare
about doing
kind
track
of,
anymore,
did this happen to you? And there are all these secrets and things. And we both kind of came upon that idea that I mentioned about every area kind of having a thesis.
It's almost like a Chewbacca.
The thing that we like to say about it basically is it was a game so good that we had to do a show about it.
Just you wait.
Because we were going to be talking about it
on the couch
at length regardless.
And her name's Abigail, by the way.
So we thought it was worth recording.
And she's looking at
at the time, now there are some Dark Souls podcasts, but at the time there were not. So we looked just to make sure we weren't stepping on anyone's toes, and we weren't. So we started it then. And it's honestly, depending on which day you ask me, it's my favorite video game. Obviously, video games are a big important part of my life. It's my job.
For creativity.
But depending on which day you ask me, Dark Souls is my absolute favorite, and it is the one out of all of the games in the series that I can revisit and replay. I have done challenge runs and kind of gimmick runs. I've speedrun the game. I can beat Dark Souls 1 in 2 hours, which is not good by speedrun standards, but I still felt good about.
It also reminds me of the 2013 film.
Yeah, I just got extremely into it. And same thing, played Demon Souls. I love Demon Souls. And Dark Souls 2 is very highly anticipated.
Bit of a coincidence, maybe?
I love Dark Souls 2 as well.
Abigail says she doesn't want to go to the beach.
It's not an absolute unqualified love. I don't love it quite as much as Dark Souls 1.
At this point in the film,
but I love that. I end up, every entry in the
thinking,
series I love.
Perhaps this family trauma,
even if there are degrees.
Like
so there's just a very important part of my life, not just in terms of my career, but also just in terms of kind of my passion.
Could maybe reflect her own.
I think that there are things that they do that are unique that you cannot get in other games.
As long as they're back before dark.
I think that's pretty special.
Abigail looks for Jason.
I did wonder actually if you'd got
drawn down
there
into
first,
this basement area in the house
because there's such a huge
something that's quite key for later.
Following
she finds a little toy rabbit
back then,
which is interesting,
and
sees a sudden reflection of herself as a child
kind of get in,
dancing as a ballerina.
Quick enough.
The child she sees smiles back, and it's all a little bit creepy.
Have that support behind you, that community,
running motif in this film.
And talk about something that people.
Jason then hides in a cupboard,
including yourself.
He's trapped when an ambulance is used to prop
what's
the door
interesting about
open.
Dark Souls, the first one specifically, is there's kind of
unable to get out.
Us, some other people as well. There's kind of a cottage industry around analysis.
They then go to see the dad
for it. So there are people, ourselves. There are a couple of other podcasts, and there are many YouTubers who made their careers, that are now
of the jokes or any gap.
Well-paying careers, people who are order of magnitude more successful than we are even, on talking about and kind of explaining and analyzing and commenting on Dark Souls.
Very unique to him as a filmmaker.
Yeah, I mean, from your recommendation, that's when I listened to
feeling of dread,
Fatia Fidja. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Disturbing bits,
and that was great. Just having a very succinct.
On their way to the beach, the daughter makes a remark about
for each
government
aspect
conspiracy
of
of putting fluoride in
that
the
really
water.
helped me.
It's kind of brushed off at the time. It's a paranoia that
talked about
has been heard
his
a million
videos,
times
and I was
before,
watching those,
but it's been
and
that
really
little
kind of
nugget in your head
filled in a lot, because I should say,
and
I did do an episode on Dark Souls, which was just me.
So
by myself rambling
I think
for like 2 hours or however long it was. So yeah, people can go back and listen to that, but I won't talk too much about that. But
again, it's this idea.
I got
power.
Dark Souls when it came out, and I must have done the first
as I'm in the
hour.
car, I listened to
about
5 on it,
5 or 6
and
times.
they joke about how it's
and I would
drugs,
do the
it's not
Asylum.
just a dope song.
I would get
so this is one of the examples of how pop culture works within
and
the film,
then I'd be
especially
like a bit
black
lost,
culture,
and I'd always do what everyone
etc.
does, which is go through the graveyard.
How a song about drugs is now lost its meaning.
Like this game's just
because it's just a great song.
I'm not sure what's happening. I keep dying, and I gave up. And I did that 5 or 6 times until I got it on Switch.
A word for drugs.
Remastered edition.
Yeah, it's quite a funny bit.
And I was like,
play there as well.
I have a long commute. My commute at that time, now it's about an hour and 20, but at that time it was 2 hours each way.
In the mainstream media,
so that's a lot of just sitting.
In this case, pop culture, they lose their original
I was like,
meaning.
right, I'm sitting here
for a main character
can't go anywhere.
Which is a little hint.
Done it, so I've only got this game and the thing.
But yeah, so Abigail
really
also
pushed
tries to teach Jason to
play through it, and yeah, it's one of those things where, and it's like with Dark Souls,
there's something a little bit off about her, and with Jason,
same kind of thing.
That's the whole thing entirely.
But when I thought it was really difficult, and then basically I understood that it's not a difficulty thing. It's kind of as hard as you want it to be, but it's very fair
at the beginning of the film, now obviously a lot older,
and just that aspect of it and the way that you can reapproach things.
Now
you can go away and grind, and
you
come
also
back
see
if you need to. You can go look somewhere else.
Shadows they cast on the sand,
but the way
it's shot from above,
help and all this stuff.
Shadows,
I was just like, it's not
family.
It's not about the fact
you also see that
I'm getting,
Abigail's
killed
is slightly out of place
immediately. It's like, and it is. I know it's that,
and they look like troops kind of marching through
culture,
and also
I kind of understand, people saying that if it's like you handed it to a complete newbie who hasn't played a game before, they're going to probably have a harder time than someone
we were introduced to their white friends, Tim Heidecker. It was really funny in this film, and
yeah, I was just so intimidated by it, by what I'd heard about. It's the hardest game of all time.
Pull me out of it a little bit,
and all this, and I was just like, man, I don't know how I'm going to do. Like, I'm not that good a gamer.
Who's always
do you know what I mean?
And there's
I've always felt that with the series that
Tim,
that kind of angle on it, or that which a lot of it is a result of marketing, as a result, result of these publishers, is really reductive.
Something to do with
because the games are about so much more than that. Like there's a lot to their Dark Souls approach to difficulty, and specifically, I think,
the covering of the.
And when I say Dark Souls, I mean the series.
Masks being very important here.
Approach to allowing the player to mitigate difficulty is really elegant
situation
in that. And there's a lot to say about that, but there's also a lot to say about these worlds and this idea of kind of player-driven archaeology where you are in a space where something has happened, and
which reflects the flashback we saw.
If you choose to engage with that part of it, you can choose to try to figure out what happened there and kind of learn these mysteries and get this depth that kind of provides context
that's now been whitewashed
to those fights and that difficulty.
To be a wizard,
and the way they do world design, the way that areas will kind of circle back on each other, or shortcuts will unlock, and you'll see the surprising connections in the world.
Twins,
there's so many things that it just does as well as the medium can do. And whenever I see it just kind of presented as like, this game will stomp your,
but also if you see,
stomp you in the balls. Like, I'm like, I think it was Dark Souls 2. There was like a Hot Wings challenge where it's like, go get the hottest wings we can have, the Dark Souls wings, and if you eat them, you get this shirt. And there are, if you Google image search bad Dark Souls t-shirt, you will see some absolutely blood-curdlingly dumb things.
It doesn't feel like that. It feels like it's
not good. The one I know, whereas I don't need, I think it says I don't need a wife because I forgot to ask, is it okay to swear?
Yeah,
that's okay. It says I don't need a wife because Dark Souls fucks me every day.
Pulled away from it. And
just like, man,
been kind of bought,
okay,
essentially.
Okay, gamer.
It's been absorbed.
I do like that idea that it's like you have to be
the effect
elite or something to
maybe
complete
that's a time thing.
It's like you really don't.
Cultural appropriation.
It's gatekeeping, right? Like it's kind of the people who there are people who with anything that's very difficult will wrap up part of their identity in it.
We see a frisbee
and will feel like, hey, this is for me and not for everyone. Because it makes me special that I can get through it, and that's a fiction. It is. I think it's more. It's a better attitude to say the things I like. I want other people to experience them too, because everyone deserves this, because it's just it's great.
A perfect double.
I still have these conversations as a close friend of mine.
So the son comes out the toilet.
Did another podcast years ago called The Wild Boar.
His hand covered in blood, and he's just standing there.
He's so anti Dark Souls because he's totally bought into that thing of these. I don't want to. You will notice as well. They always collect for him. Losing the idea of losing progress.
So here it's a Mac
is mind baffling.
But yeah, it's just
why do I want to redo
as you go through the film.
A bit I've just done?
The family
have to explain to him. It's like, well, for one thing, you can get those back.
Find him. And he's like,
you learn stuff
and they take him home.
When you die, you've learned something. And so you go back, and also those souls are still there. Do you know what I mean?
It's like it's drawn.
They're not like.
So there's a lot of this
that's your kind of progress as such. And if you really wanted to, you could go somewhere else.
You see that Jason
and grind a whole bunch of souls.
Drawn a disturbing cradle picture of the man he saw at the beach,
but the point of it,
it's from a strange angle. It's the back,
and also it's the idea that you can't pause it, which I know sounds really silly. But
Jason's own head,
having kids as well, I was like, I've got so much going on, and if I can't pause it,
so it's not only a nod to when Abigail
it's not like it's
Double's Head, but also the idea that he was maybe
Doom style game or something. It's like there are moments where you can probably just stand there. Go get yourself a cup of tea
during this process,
and it's it's not that crazy, but and he still doesn't want to play it because it's this idea of
now it kind of doesn't really
he doesn't want to put effort into something which he feels like isn't getting
mask and
rewarded properly, and I'm like, well, that's kind of. But the whole point of it is a risk-reward thing, and you're actually getting more out of it.
It's because of the way he looks and seems to understand Abigail, and again, we'll come
but what is counterintuitive to games is that there is definitely you lose a lot when you die in Dark Souls. You keep so much
towards it,
right? Like you keep the progress if you've made your way to a bonfire. You keep any doors you've opened. You keep any items you've picked up. So you keep mini bosses or bosses you've killed. Like you actually keep quite a bit when you die. And the thing that you lose, which is souls, feels really bad because sometimes it can have a little bit of that
that there's a black cloud
feeling where it's like, man, 20,000 souls, like that's a really big number. Like how pinball machines, you never get 10 points for something, you always get 10 million points for something. But then if it takes you 70,000 souls to level up, at that point or whatever, or if it takes it takes some, it's really not
the self-reflection.
Currency of souls devalues as you play the game. You need them less; they are worth less. So you can take these bigger swings. You can risk losing them because you're not really losing much.
Similar to Hands Across America,
and that's a psychological trick that the game does because it wants you to persevere past that loss. And it wants you to understand, death is not
that we saw at the beginning. The
end. Like it is okay to accept this and try again.
The dad comes out and
it's nice.
Nicely.
It is quite funny because it's like I would right at the beginning if I lost like
grabs a baseball bat and
2,000 souls. and I was at work, that's all I'd talk about with anyone. I'd be like, I'm playing Dark Souls, I lost 2,000 souls. I'd be beating myself up about it so bad, going, I can't believe it.
Call your family. Take out an ad.
Just having to have some quiet time by myself, just rocking in the corner. And then like cut to like, I don't know, like 2 weeks later, I've lost like 90,000 souls. I'm like,
in a bit of a funny way.
Yeah. Frustrating, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And it does kind of play with that, which is a great part of the learning experience.
Mask, and he's a bit
so I kind of came into Dark Souls 2 straight off Dark Souls 1.
Claps,
which
whistles,
in hindsight was
scissors,
probably a bad
and a single
idea
gloved hand because
red
jumpsuits, which
I thought it would be like, cool, I'm just kind of, continuing. Now, but I think it was just like way too much. Like and what I didn't realise is that it is a long ass game.
She moves in a very
much bigger than the first one, especially with the DLC.
Slightly unnatural manner. Which
and I did it. I was like adamant. I was like, no, do it, complete it all, do all the DLCs, and just by the end, I was just like, man, is this ever gonna finish? And just straight off doing Dark Souls 1, I was like, I should have played the game a little like palette cleanser
Jason
in the middle, which is weirdly what I'm doing now. So I've started Dark Souls 2, I've only done about an hour or so, but in the middle I played Far Cry 5.
Looking at the exact versions of themselves.
I was playing it, and I feel like playing Dark Souls
Red begins talking.
Changed.
Says, once upon a time.
Inside me, because I was playing Far Cry 5 and whatever, I've done like 3, 4, and it's like whatever, I'm just going around shooting. I'm playing it going, this just feels like an absolute waste of my time.
Hurt.
I'm hating it, I'm just not enjoying it. And now I'm like,
once upon a time,
Dark Souls strangely ruined.
So she tells us they are connected.
I had a long period of that. It took a long time for me to kind of reckon with things that, like, as much as I think that the Souls games are absolutely truly remarkable,
she got toys
that there are things you can't get from them. And just be like, well, okay, if I'm in the mood for what those can provide, this is the best answer. If I'm in the mood for something else, I need to know where to go. For that, because there are like things like, I like strategy games a lot. Like I like things that are less reflex based as well.
The lack of free healthcare in America,
being able to go to that is really important. For me from time to time. But yeah, I had the same experience in an early episode of Bonfireside Chat. I think I bring up the idea of saying, like, I can't imagine going to like God of War after this, because that is kind of a mindless button masher. And then flash forward to 2018, where the God of War reboot is basically cribbed a lot from Dark Souls in terms of the combat. Like it's had this huge impact. So I think you're not alone in having that feeling of kind of ruination.
Good.
The real dad.
It's light at the end of the tunnel. It was really weird. How many times do you think you've completed Dark Souls 2 then?
A bit of a release of the tension.
Two. So also,
there's a message.
One I've done the most. Two, I've probably played the second most number of times, and I've probably completed it, not counting. Each of these times was not with the DLCs.
So
probably 6, 5 or 6.
Horror Daddy's dragged off by his brutish.
Because I see there's for the new game plus things change, which I'll kind of bring up again a little bit later. But did you do it? Do you like start afresh, or is this like a new game plus?
Sent off to play with one another.
For me, I'm not chasing those bigger numbers. I always want to try a new build.
Right.
So I did new game plus once in Dark Souls 2 because, as you mentioned, it has changed things. But every other one, I was like, well, what is this like if I don't play with it? I don't allow myself to equip a shield. Or what is this like if I just do ranged attacks? Like I'm just a hexcaster or a sorcerer.
Stuff they want to fit in,
things like that.
Which kind of harks back to
so twins. For anyone, if you've got this far in and you don't know what Dark Souls is, then well done.
It's just interesting.
Dark Souls 2, I should first say it's a computer game.
Take off his mask.
A video game.
We're not talking about what if we were talking about a restaurant?
It's quite a cool shot.
Like we got to this part and we're just like, it is the restaurant that ruins all other restaurants. I can't eat down at God of War, the Italian place, or the Greek place down the street.
She chains up Abigail.
What a horrible name for a restaurant.
Smashes her head.
And I like the idea it's number 2.
It's a mirrored table, so that's
like they did another one. That one didn't work out.
The reflection is now cracked.
So we're going to call it the same thing.
And also,
they have restaurants like I've been to restaurants where it's like
so now they're all against
like you go into a place that's like Luigi's 2, and I'm like, what is this?
That doesn't exist, surely.
Yeah. She cuts the head off the rabbit.
So good.
And the girl tries to run away from her very fast shadow self. So the dad,
but yes, a game, and it was released in March of 2014, and then there was an edition called The Scholar of the First Scene, which I believe was released about a year later, and that included a few changes, and it also included 3 sets of DLC that had been released, which will
suddenly they're attacked by their other selves. So now see.
It's known as an action RPG, much the same as Dark Souls 1.
So at this moment,
and it's the same just as before. So as we're discussing, you kind of fighting your way through this magical world.
It's weird.
You start with next to nothing, and soon you become this
twist,
all-powerful warrior to a degree. And the same rules apply for the most part. There are bonfires where you respawn if you die. You lose your souls, which is essentially your XP or currency. If you make it back to where you died, you can reclaim them. If you die before you get there, those souls have gone forever.
And there's quite a funny moment where they try and tell
the 2 significant changes in this game is that you can walk between bonfires from the off, and that when you die, you lose a bit of your max HP, and I think it's half. Is that right?
So when our hero family turn up, they notice that the shadows selves have taken over.
It's hard for me to say because I think that is something that maybe changed during it, and I know you can get a ring that affects it. So I'm getting confused. That is a legacy mechanic from Demon's Souls, in which you lost half from the jump. Like if you were not in a specific state, so in Demon's Souls, you have a human form and a soul form. If you are in soul form, you are at half HP in Demon's Souls. So this they make that gradual. I think it is half, but I also think it's changed in all these different versions. So
I played
the Scholar of the First edition on PS4, and
goes to kill Abigail.
I had the ring.
Is it the colour? So at first I wondered if
colonoscopy ring. It's not called that.
I think it's the cling. I think it might be it's the cling ring in Demon's Souls.
Okay.
But then I wonder if the end reveal
it's like Colanthery or something like that. But yeah, I had that ring, and that's what kind of annoyed me is I had this ring on throughout the whole of the game, apart from when I used a human effigy, which is the same as humanity. The first game, which gives you,
and there seems to be some sort of standing protest going on between these people in red jumpsuits.
If I used that, I would unequip the ring and then use another one.
Afraid,
but I was just getting by the end of it, I was just getting so annoyed by this extra bit of
Mexico, which is obviously quite funny
admin. And I think at one point when I was listening to you guys, you say the fact that it's
by building a wall.
And this is kind of how I was thinking about it as well. Is that you're with you and your ring on whatever it's 75%, I think it was whatever max HPs. If you think of that as your max on its own island in this bloodied house when you turn human, that's just like a little bit extra.
Try to step out of its comfort zone and help
exactly. That helps you deal with it more, and that's kind of how I was thinking of it as I was playing. But I was just like, it really annoyed me.
So when I started playing it, I was just like, you don't get to make decisions anymore.
Because I didn't realise either.
This could be one of those things. Feminism.
I don't think they tell you. And I'm like, what's going on with my health bar?
Making orders is kind of
it's a little inelegant, and it's also a little bit of kind of what we like. We call in the network like a four-bit horror.
Again,
mechanic. Like you have difficulty with the section it killed you. When you go into it, you have less strength.
Denier.
And I think what they're doing in that is that it will get harder each time, as you lose that HP. And I think they're, subtly trying to encourage you to turn human, to use the effigy. Because then when you use effigy, you can engage with the multiplayer. Right. So if you're really having, and this isn't prescriptive, like nobody needs to do that, but I think that's what they're trying to nudge you towards, is just if you are continually in this kind of death spiral of losing health on the same part over and over, use an effigy, and then, maybe there's a summon sign on the ground, and you can get past that and experience more of the game.
That's
interesting, So that's another thing, is there is a multiplayer aspect to it. Much like the first game, people can invade your game, you can invade others,
watching this girl
you can leave signs to be summoned into someone else's game, you can summon people into yours to help you out. There's like that PvP element, which is, I believe, is still really popular to this day within Dark Souls 2.
Which is interesting.
Here.
It's kind of surprising because Dark Souls 2, like in the fan community, doesn't have as good a reputation as the first one. But as far as PvP goes, it's still pretty vibrant because there's a really, really wide variety of builds.
Kind of set a trap,
so the meta is pretty robust.
That the boy likes to.
Yeah, I never really delve into it that much. I mean, I got invaded a few times, but
into the fight where he literally just
I was always just.
Abigail's like, no,
it wasn't really much of a fight. I was just like, okay, well, I'll try and see how long I can last.
That, to be honest.
But yeah, I mean, I didn't realise things until afterwards. Like you can turn in. I think you did it in the first one as well, right? You turn into
in terms of the mask,
part of the scenery, and you can hide, which is cool.
Once action
there's a couple really kind of cool mechanics or items or spells that only affect PvP. So you can disguise yourself. There is one, I believe, that makes changes the lock-on distance that you have. And my favorite one in Dark Souls 2 is there's an item called Seed of the Tree of Giants. Which if someone invades you, so usually when somebody comes in to fight you, the enemies that are already there, that are part of the world, do not fight them, they only fight you. But if you use this seed, it will turn the world against them. So they come in to invade you, but any of the enemies that are fighting you will also fight them.
I would listen.
So it kind of gives you a little bit of an edge.
Yeah.
So
that's quite funny. I can imagine that would
seems to be a little less bothered. The fact that her son's
there's also, I mean, not to ramble on, but I forgot about this as well. There's actually 2 explicit PvP areas in Dark Souls 2 where you can use an item called a Pharaoh's Lockstone to create traps.
And this homeless guy.
So you kind of create this little, like almost funhouse zone with different traps that you can summon people into, and they can kind of fight you on your own turf, like through this gauntlet.
The mother goes into the funhouse.
You kind of a little mildly customized. Like it's all binary. You just turn things that already exist on or off. You don't get to move anything. It's not like Fallout 4 style base building or anything.
We haven't seen them since the
it's explicitly for that. And there are covenants you can join, which are a way of aligning yourself with certain like in-game factions. In the game that explicitly are for that type of multiplayer.
And if you remember, Alice went down a hole
just very creative
into another world.
It's
when she followed
super
White
deep,
Rabbit, which is basically what's happening here.
I never really explored any of that with both games, really. I think I did a bit of invading and, helping people out in the first game. Didn't really do it with the second one because I was just knackered.
She goes to a classroom.
I was like, I'm kind of done with this for a bit.
A bit more context here. She
one of the other things which is new is that enemies now have a limited respawn.
2 bodies.
Which I was in 2 minds about. I suppose it's good.
Couldn't copy the soul
because if I'm having a hard time with something and I'm dying a lot, which that did happen, then the more I'm going through it, the easier it's getting in theory. But for some reason, I just felt like I was failing. Like if there was like a gap where there was like an enemy or something, I'm just like,
unfortunately,
it's like the guy has given up. Has given up on me. That the enemies are like
underneath.
I'm not going back. I'm not going back there against the same idiot again and again. Forget this.
If you're not going to take this seriously, I'm not going to take this seriously.
By the way, this shot, where it's like Red's face.
Well, again, that kind of like modular nature of the game where they put in player control. Like,
focus shot,
so you can depopulate an area. Some people do it on purpose. Sometimes it happens naturally. But then another thing that's unique to Dark Souls 2, that's not in the rest of the series, is an item called a Bonfireside
It was one special moment,
which allows you to respawn everything at a slightly tougher, but not incomprehensibly tougher level.
That was
you can burn at a bonfire and you'll get everything back, and it'll be worth more souls and have have their New Game Plus drops.
Somehow this
basically shunts a New Game Plus enemy into your base game.
It changed her.
So they give you some dominion over that, which I think is just again very cool. Like you can depopulate it if you want to. If you do that on accident, you can undo it. There's a lot of player control involved in Dark Souls 2.
Or whatever it is on their bed.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of times where
in the army,
and I'll kind of go into it a bit later.
They take up arms,
where just having it becoming gradually depopulated did help me a lot because I was just like, I don't know how I should get through some of the bits without having those initial enemies
seems to be worshipped
out the way
within the
worry about them,
be a source of inspiration.
But yeah, it was an interesting part that I don't remember the first time it happened. I think
because if it wasn't for her,
Heidi's
none of this would have happened. So it's all quite interesting.
When I respawned from the bonfire. And I'm like...
So now they fight.
Oh, and I think it's that first one that's like down the side of the cliff, and as soon as you go up the stairs,
and their fight
he's like there.
There's
like one of those big old
dancing
night
that
things.
they did as a kid.
And I remember going up and like looking around and being like,
easily dodging, and dancing past Abigail's
like,
attacks.
Have I just glitched something out? And then it was only that I started realising.
And if you remember, a sense of
some of these guys are like,
it would appear that.
Maybe
she's not the
they're missing.
The greatest dancer
it's very surreal because one of the things about
all kind of
the Dark Souls series of games that make it have the particular feel it has is
rather than
the enemy placement and such are enemies don't tend to move. Some of them have kind of short patrols, and they would do more of this later in the series, but they tend to just be kind of static, and they're agnostic to your presence in a way. Like they are just there. It's just the world. It's this unchanging thing. Like I felt in some ways there are portions of it that feel very strategic and almost like chess-like. Because you can see the enemy. It doesn't tend to aggro when you see it. Its range is smaller, so you can kind of plan your approach, things like that. And the world, the fact that when you die, enemies just walk away from you, and then it just comes back. Is part of that kind of feeling of almost like agnosticism to your presence.
You're safe.
Obviously they're very aggressive once they get in that range.
He's not sure if
when an enemy disappears, it feels like it violates one of the fundamental rules of the game.
And you feel like that's not really
interesting.
Going to be the case.
Thinking about it like that.
That maybe she's clinging to something that's no longer such a weird. The mask of her reality has almost slipped away. Now she does whatever she can to put that mask back.
So I'll briefly talk about the plot, or
so they drive away in
I
an
have understood the plot, or what I've garnered from
care in America, maybe
sources.
Maybe. And
so,
let me get to the twist.
Like the game before.
Now, I believe this is her remembering
an interesting introduction scene, but basically a lot of the exposition.
I'm not sure if she always knew
is
or
played
if it
out.
Just came to her.
So I'm gonna let's have a listen to that.
Actually, she chained up the original Abigail and took her place. So the Abigail that we've been following was originally one of the tethered. They swapped places. That's the shock. So this whole time we thought that Abigail was the human one, trying to like stave off the tethered, when Red was the original human, the girl that we saw at the beginning. And I thought that was quite a cool twist. So it recontextualises basically what's just happened. Was she fighting for her family? Or was she fighting to cover up who she truly is? That's why she didn't talk, for instance, when she was a child. She didn't know how. That's why she's bad at rhythm and dancing. She doesn't have, that soul, like we said. That's why she was chained up in the house. That was kind of like Red.
Once
doing a bit of revenge, like a vendetta. You could have taken me with you, remember, she says to Abigail, which now makes that line all the much sadder, doesn't it? So who is the enemy here? It's tough to decide, and the answer is there probably isn't really an enemy, but
your future,
I thought it was a great little twist. I didn't see it coming. But throughout the film, I was a bit like, maybe not. And when it did happen, I was like, the way they did it, I was like, that's pretty cool.
And
I liked it.
You won't even care. By
Abigail
then,
kind of puts on this freakish smile, and you're not sure if it's genuine or if it's that same weird smile she would give as a kid that we saw.
Hollow.
But either way, Jason looks on a bit quizzically as he puts on his mask. Does he really know?
Long ago,
is it maybe that he's seen this murderous savage part of his mother, and it maybe terrifies him, so he's hiding behind the mask? There's a lot to be read into it, and now
built a great
both
kingdom.
of them are essentially
they
wearing masks,
called
one
it
way or another, literally and
Dragon
metaphorically. So we then zoom out to see the tethered all holding hands while the uplifting song of Nephew, that's how you say it, by Minnie Riperton.
But one day
goes on, and we see a bunch of helicopters,
helicopters
and smoke rising in the background.
Without
it's
really
apocalyptic
knowing why.
And yet weirdly hopeful. But why? So now we're going to take a look and get into the nitty-gritty of it. So let's take a break, roll up our sleeves as we take a good look at inside us. So there's a lot going on with us, and I'm going to try and break it down as much as possible. So firstly, who are the tethered? So we're led to believe that it's a government conspiracy that was abandoned. But these lower classes, and that's what they are the forgotten. They are literally the real abandoned, the poor. They're left to fend for themselves. In the context of the film's reality, it's quite a leap to think that there's just this entire population of America living under low-class demons. How can that still function? who changes the light bulbs? How does it work? Why is it even access to a funhouse? One of the access points here. So of course, it's better to see this as one big metaphor rather than going too far down the logistics of how something like this cloak works. In theory, the tethered are like mindless,
like a moth drawn to a flame.
Controlled. So they represent
your wings will
darker,
burn
more
in
primitive side of us. Let's be honest, that's kind of
time after time.
I was also playing with the idea that they could also essentially be virtual versions of ourselves, like living within a controlled environment, avatars almost. Is it representing how we're secretly controlled by the government without us knowing?
Fate.
And usually this is through
The
virtual
fate
means these
of
days.
the cursed.
Blindly being led around by greater power. If you think about the whole fiasco with Russia and Cambridge Analytica and all this stuff, maybe it's a case of our virtual selves just being led around and thinking that we have autonomy and that we're able to.
So the idea here is that you,
we don't.
Please tell me if I'm wrong with any of this, or if I know there's
the white clinical
up for interpretation. But
look
how I understood
it also makes me think
it seems as if you're forgetting your family because you're cursed.
Futuristic tech company, maybe.
You're drawn through this vortex
thing
where you end up in things betwixt.
It's interesting to think, like, how were they controlling us? What were they doing
firekeepers
exactly?
who basically heckle you.
So it's quite interesting to think about what
and then you make your way
and what they actually
through
how they actually went about it.
I don't want to see Drangelic in terms of the kingdom.
To think about it. I'm interested.
I've forgotten what that area is called.
Symbolically,
Majula, Drang Lake, and then Majula is your hub area.
Part of ourselves,
and that's where the Emerald Herald is.
The idea
and
myth
in order to break this curse, you're basically told to seek King Vendrick, and that's your kind of mission, basically. I don't really understand.
It's a sign of bad luck. It's usually
where you've started. What is this vortex? Are you traveling through time,
human nature,
and space to get to this place?
So if you think of Dostoevsky's,
the vortex is tricky. So that's about to understand
exploits the flaws of their good
the Dark Souls 2 story. There's like a couple things that I think are really important. One of which is to know that the game had a very troubled development, and the story was basically rewritten partway through. So there are things that were there are remnants of that first story, and that tends to be how I think of the portal and the vortex in the beginning, because
that's the point of it, right?
You in this game, you are a character, but
no matter where you're from,
for theming purposes, and for what ultimately the story is going to be about, you are again kind of anonymous.
Truthfully, we know
it's a game where it is concerned with
chirpy, fake smile, and it's
you kind of going through these motions of almost this prophecy or cycle.
Clearly,
that the world and all of the worlds of this cosmology are trapped in.
Red, essentially.
So if when you talked about Dark Souls 1, you talked about
the last thing she saw on TV.
That cycle.
She left.
Dark Souls 1 starts when the flame is fading
as well,
that's when the curse comes about.
That kind of
that's what's happening here. And whenever the flame is fading, someone needs to
and also when you look at
kind of kickstart the cycle again.
That final shot, it looks like a scar.
Basically. And that's what you're doing in this game. The game, like obliquely, characters in the game will make reference to the fact that you don't know what you're doing and why you're moving forward.
And that's part of the reason why the film ends.
Characters will say you'll end up at the gates of this and you won't understand why. It's one of the first things the game tells you. And at first that can feel very unsatisfying from kind of a literal perspective, and I've come to really appreciate that as a thing where it doesn't matter which cursed that I am. It is just someone's job to go and rekindle this flame. In this game, as opposed to it literally being a fire, you're going and you're setting out something called the Throne of Want, to kind of again restart this cycle.
I feel like it really was
that's happening again, or continue this cycle.
In reality, though,
it's interesting because
kind of what I speak about
when I remember the old woman or whatever at the beginning saying,
even though it's
you'll get to the gates and never realise why you're there, and coming straight off the back of Dark Souls 1,
I mean, it didn't work, really,
I had no idea what the plot was basically as I was playing it until afterwards. I was like, that will probably happen because I know most of the story is in this introduction scene, and I know that by the time I get to the end, I'm just going to be like, what's going on?
They're difficult games to keep a finger on the plot the whole time you're playing through. And when I play a new one, I generally don't try. I kind of sit back and I kind of it's akin to like a Magic Eye.
Red.
Yeah, one of those paintings where you just kind of relax your eyes. I try to do that and see if something forms, and then I start reading text after I beat the game. And by text, I mean
part of the inspiration,
going over character dialogues, reading item descriptions, and things like that. But I give myself that first run through to be very confused. And in Dark Souls 1, there's an element of like a bait and switch.
As you probably guessed already,
very early on, you're told about this prophecy.
It's about America.
Where the chosen undead will leave the asylum and go ring the 2 bells and such. And then you find out there's a lot more to it. In Dark Souls 2, the idea, I think, is that they've zoomed out a little bit.
Even though they may be deemed
there are all those kind of trappings, seek the Lord Souls, get past the Shrine of Winter, find King Vendrick. But all of that stuff is kind of hand-waving because, like in Dark Souls 1, it ultimately kind of doesn't matter. The cycle, you're trapped in the cycle, you are going through the motions. And it's one of the things where, not to jump ahead too much, but when the DLC for Dark Souls 2 came out, I found it to be something that really tied the story together very well, because it does introduce this alternative where it's like, hey, actually, we can keep trying to seek. We don't have to either do, rekindle the flame or let it burn out and do an Age of Dark. Let's keep trying to find something different. As like another ending.
Abigail is
there, which is still a question mark. It doesn't say what that other different thing is, but it does introduce the possibility of trying
something and
continuing the struggle
by switching places. But it is. It's the
I'm very much the same with.
I
purposefully didn't really know what was going on in Dark Souls 1, but with this one again, I was like. Because I was aware of all the fact that a lot of the plot is in the weird, like archaic kind of language of the dialogue and the item descriptions and stuff like that. I was like, I'll just casually keep an eye out for it. I'll talk to whoever, but I'm not going to go too crazy actively searching for answers whilst I'm playing it or anything like that. So, when I was listening to you guys, for instance, I made a point of doing that after I'd completed the game, so that I was almost like reliving it and then also like reading up about it at the same time. Which I found, subdued. Yeah, you've kind of got that purity, right? Of kind of going into it fresh.
So by kind of strangling Abigail,
go into it in more detail. But I quite like to think, like, let's just play the game.
She's essentially
play the game
and
enjoy it, and then I can do my homework afterwards.
Of course.
Yeah, and you're still, when that first playthrough, you're still focusing on things. You're focusing on the mechanical side of the game. Which is still very important and a huge part of it.
Attacking, killing.
So in terms of the rest of the plot,
of the upper classes,
because most of it is talking about what's happened before that point,
tragic, really.
That you've come in, you basically find out that King Vendrick vanquished 4 great souls and built the kingdom,
kind of keeping up with the Joneses,
upon them, which I think is supposed to be a link. There's a lot of subtle links to the first Dark Souls. It doesn't seem to be like
live their full lives. They can live their own American dream.
Reference. They just hint at it every now and then.
Abigail,
it seems like
through sheer luck.
You see, there was a huge war with the giants, and that's because this evil queen, who you find out is a daughter of the Abyss. So basically, she's evil.
When she was,
I think it essentially planned it all and told him to cross the seas and defeat the giants.
Through creativity.
And when Vendrick went there, he brought back some great power, and the giants followed.
Something that transcends.
Are we told what this great power is?
Resonates through to
at any point.
Humans.
Not explicitly.
That's why the ballet dance is super important.
The kind of prevailing theory and
it's something that inspires
also
the tethered below.
I
it's
think
something they can
is
feel. It's their way of
ability to possibly the Throne of Want,
worship the one
right? Like when we actually get to the end, it is a big chair that has a smaller human-sized chair carved into it, which would imply at one point it was possibly for a giant. And then also Vendrick at some point gains the ability to kind of create these golems, like manipulate soul energy to make these automata, and that would be an explanation for how he was able to rise to prominence and build his kingdom. On the backs of this unfeeling labor.
She's actually from
so it's one or both of those.
And those they're funny. I'll come on to it a bit later, but it took me ages to think when you're going into the castle,
get these jumpsuits and come up,
and to open the door, you have to.
So she's kind of this catalyst that's
kill
communicating between
underlings essentially close
help
to it. And I just couldn't figure it out for ages. I was just like, sometimes the door would open, I'd go through,
kill and die,
and then sometimes I'm like, how many of these people
to be able to exist
are going to keep coming at me on this platform?
As a kid.
And that's how the golems operate, right? Is that you kind of basically have to kill someone near them. Essentially, I was about to say, which turns them on.
Full on revenge.
Yeah, the souls that would go into your currency, that would go into your wallet, instead go into the golem and power them.
Absolutely awful.
Which is better than saying turns them on.
This is what has happened.
Time again throughout history. I mean, it is hard to see, right? Because the signaling is that the little energy thing that maybe you've never noticed till all game, like when you kill an enemy
in America,
that pops at you, instead goes somewhere else. But you're controlling your camera, you're playing an action game. It's not cinematically presented, so it's not like the devs can show you what they want you to see.
Few facts do you hear?
So it's easy to miss.
Yeah.
Are earning
and
more
miss it
wealth
I did.
than the bottom half of American society, which is
and then there's a curse. A curse has taken over the kingdom. The king seems to try many different things to cure it. His brother Aldia starts experimenting in morally dubious means in order to find this cure. And then we're told that Vendrick just basically ups and disappears.
A 900 billion decrease.
You find out basically that, spoilers, which is how the episode will be anyway. The end game becomes
this is happening now.
A bit long, let's say, because he's basically trying to create obstacles, right? So this evil queen
that the upper classes
can't take power because she's the daughter of the abyss and she's bad. She's very pretty though.
Red. So red, literally the colour
up until that final bit.
And
even then,
not just because of the character's name.
So that's kind of what I was thinking it was in a really
colour red obviously represents
big nutshell.
Blood, it represents danger.
Would I be correct?
They're also the colour of the prison-like
that's correct.
As if the
like it is a lot of again.
I'm sure the fact that the number of
kind of furniture moving.
Isn't something that's forgotten here either.
That is a little bit of kind of
throughout the movie.
Once you know the scale and that this is a cycle that's played over and over. You mentioned that he built his kingdom on top of these other kingdoms. When you look at items and things, there are references to just kingdom after kingdom. There are characters who say, countless kingdoms have risen and fallen. This is millennia after the first game, but in the same basic area.
Subconsciously, she's fighting
and the cycle has continued to go. Like it has continued to roll. We have had ages of light, we've had ages of dark over and over. And what you're basically learning when you're learning about Vendrick is him. In the first game, Gwyn sacrificed himself at the kiln to prolong the age of light, the age of fire. Here, Vendrick is trying to stop Nashandra, his queen, from getting to the throne and starting the age of dark.
Yeah.
So he's doing all these things, and he is not taking the throne because he is, she's manipulating him. We eventually do find him, and he's locked himself in a chamber with a guardian outside to stop her from getting to him.
Red has now been lulled into being the underclass,
is hollow,
the voiceless,
which is in this game it's when you're a zombie basically.
So she's
in the series. His soul is locked somewhere else that's also really heavily guarded. He has tried to stop her.
So keep in mind,
from being able to gain access to this chamber.
Abigail really fought,
and you do get access to this chamber, which would be horrible if you weren't able to defeat her. But you are able to defeat her and are able to kind of save the day. So you sit on the chair rather than her sitting on the chair, which would definitely give you the dark. But again, you also learn through this that it's a cycle. So if it is an age of dark, that only that doesn't really matter because there'll always be a little bit of an ember. It will always grow back.
Shadows.
It's interesting. I like the way they're stuck in this perpetual medieval.
The flaws of the character.
The society doesn't seem to progress to like
track athlete,
mobile phones.
Miserable all the time.
and no one's invented the gun until Bloodborne.
She's also called
Umbri, which is not in the same continuity. I'm just joking. But
the darkest part of the shadow.
I really like that they are.
I believe it literally means something like second
and
shadow.
What them being stuck means is that, and I think that Dark Souls 2 functions best as this, almost as like a short story collection of people who are involved in this kind of cosmic trap.
Pluto, the name.
Because since you're on top of all these kingdoms, you learn about how all of these different kingdoms reacted to the cycle. So like when you go to the Huntsman's Copse, you learn about this king who, when the undead started showing up, he tortured them. And we saw this evidence of this. There are jail cells. He has that executioner's chariot boss, which is set. It's literally an undead horse that runs in circles, running over the undead. for eternity, like an eternity of being tortured. That's how he reacted to this outbreak. As we learn how these different cultures reacted to it, and I think that stuff is really cool, because and that's unique to Dark Souls 2. Like, we don't get multiple stories in any of the other entries. We just know how the current connection culture deals
still
with
her form.
It's interesting, actually, because or
is it just because it's
come on to that? Made a little note here a bit later of
it's
like
interesting to think about.
The execution of like chariot thing is like
rich white Americans.
Man, does that just see
African Americans?
It just keeps going.
That poor horse,
strong,
that poor horse, that poor driver, those poor people.
To this point, I was thinking, like, why is he need a driver?
Empowered athletes, essentially,
that's where he's going,
filling racist stereotypes.
You'd be constantly like, you feel sick after.
As I said earlier, the film also does that. It takes.
But like the idea is like, no, that's your job,
and how. Mainstream culture basically absorbs it.
Keep
very
going.
Like Sisyphusian.
And the fucking police thing.
It's very like Sisyphusian. Like, it's very like, the eternal, like mythic, like an eternal task.
Yeah, we also sing songs like that without thinking about the original meaning behind them, and especially in this current political climate, that song is just as important as it was back then. So it doesn't really have the same effect anymore, does it? It's also in contrast to the sunny white Beach Boys that was played just before, which is a very
breakneck speed walkthrough of the game, but just kind of going through the areas.
You can see
the
racial
bosses,
difference here being highlighted.
And I'll try not to linger too much on stuff because it is
the funhouse is interesting. Find yourself, it says.
But and if you guys do want more detail, if there's certain areas where it's about, then obviously highly recommend if you go to Gary's Bonfireside Chat, and you can check out specific episodes, and they're all like neatly labelled, so the different areas and all this stuff. So yeah, if there's an area you want to hear more about, or if you're at a certain point in the game or something like that, then yeah, you can kind of get a bit more of a deep dive on those areas there.
America and the characters in these films,
because it's a billion times more in depth than
for their actions that are sins in the treatment of others.
So
all of which is in this movie as well.
So Gary, when you set up your character's loadout, what's the first one? What build do you usually go for?
Zombies, not even knowing what really is truly
happening. I've done a bunch of them. So I don't have a standard one. Probably the most fun that I've had through the game was doing a Hexcaster.
And it discusses how
so it's one of the types of magic in this. In that case, I start as a priest,
which is a
for that
Trump tactic,
and you head to you kind of do the areas out of order. You head to Hades, Tower of Flame first, because the priest of the merchant there, you need to murder her to take her things to get the Hexcaster's equipment early.
Like flag or
so that's interesting. Yeah, I'm really boring.
Masks are important.
So I've only done the
people hiding their true nature or using it as a defense mechanism,
and trying to make myself basically like a walking tank.
Again, his an animal mask. That's possible. Here, brave and dangerous.
Nothing boring about that. I love in Dark Souls 2 where you can dual wield
his mask is
items, and you can do it with anything. So you can get just absolutely hammers as big as a man.
Otherwise, why would it be
and you can have two of them.
Is it representing a
and that's immensely satisfying.
White mask.
Yeah, I'm very much a shield.
I'm not sure if it works in this scenario, but
like a great sword,
still
kind of
guy. Of how all of them
which means I'm super slow,
pretending to be
really slow. And I usually towards the end games, especially with this one,
of how the boy
just trying to push all my stats into
moves it behaves like
adaptability,
pretends to be white. I mean, even if you look at the very beginning, the funfair itself
kind of getting my equip load.
It's all bright lights and fun,
endurance,
distractions. While the dark,
that's what I've always gone for. I've always been tempted to do magic build, and I did start doing Dark Souls 1 again as a
it shows the true nature of their family relationship.
Pyromancy, I think it was,
and
now. Yeah, I was like, I'm just going to... It was because I did it right after playing
face
it.
The truth.
The first time I was like, I'm going to go into Dark Souls 2. So I've not really broached it yet.
What's with the get-up?
I enjoy the strength thing. I like the thing of getting in there.
So yeah, the prison-like outfits
getting your hands dirty.
Thing, and I think the fact that Abigail is chained up.
Kind of the way I
same
play
way
it anyway.
Abigail.
So yeah, you start off in the Things Betwixt, which is like this ancient forest.
Maybe the
it's a tutorial area, essentially. And I remember as soon as I started, I was trying to kill those little animals that
Abigail has to literally
then as soon as you wake up,
chains,
and realised I was already out of my depth.
Holding her down to be free.
They do a weird thing about Dark Souls 2 is you don't start as your character.
Separation.
You start as this kind of blank slate that's very weak, and then you have to go in and do the character creation with the 3 crones.
That's true. Yeah.
So you don't have a weapon, you don't have anything.
They look like
so it's very those things are called kobolds, and it's very difficult to kill those with just your fist with your blank slate character.
I tried. I was just thinking, stand for them. And I think it came up with an achievement of Welcome to Dark Souls.
I think it looks a little bit like a posh driving glove or a golf glove.
I really should have known better than
how gloves are used in the upper classes.
Totally overconfident.
Apparently, it's also kind of a hint at Michael Jackson.
It's really annoying. So,
perfect.
Who exactly are these?
Michael Jackson, softly spoken pop star.
I was thinking, who are these firekeepers? Like, why are they here? Not guarding their fires for a start, apart from the one fire, whatever.
In reality, he's a sadistic paedophile
or whatever. And they're
allegedly, but
what is this place?
True anyway.
Why are they giving me such a hard time?
Red is Michael Jackson.
What's their problem?
That's why she chose the 302 shirt.
They're bad upbringing.
Probably clung on to
bad upbringing. Maybe they didn't get good sleep. I know I'm always cranky if I don't get a good night's sleep.
So I have just walked into their house as well.
Interesting.
Unannounced.
Again, we talked about
it's a combination of trespassing and low blood sugar.
Reflections of the mirror.
And just being old. She makes people grumpy.
Absolutely, But on the plus side, you get to fart with impunity in grocery stores. If the only people around here are anything to go by.
What is the value?
I do it now.
Representation.
You're ahead of your time.
What's your identity?
Yeah.
So that's not exclusive for old people.
Practically speaking,
I didn't know. What a revelation.
For breeding,
so I
guess it's a good continuous source for the tether to live off on. It's also worth noting how they generally use
so that they give you a bit more context of the story. They're like, and that's where you said you do your character creation, and then you're out, and you're free, and you're learning how to
Alice in Wonderland reference, which we discussed, rabbit
attack
being associated with
and all this stuff in these little trees.
It's almost
side, which is just I find a bit weird, and obviously like coming from the first game, and then it's all like front doors. I was like,
very similar to what Red is
doing. You're gonna fight a boss.
With her situation,
that's like there's enough of them.
Toy represents what Abigail left behind.
Basically, you work your way through to Medulla, which, as you said, is your base. It's by the ocean. It's very serene. It's got some nice music.
Time down in
this is
where,
the Emerald Herald is. Who levels you
if
up.
You remember, that's when she has a flashback to the
everything's kind of here. You get a key later on that opens up.
So she's reminded of where she's from,
your weapons.
She's come basically by this white rabbit toy.
You burn your Estus shards,
and also the fact that Red cuts off the head
you can
of
upgrade that. There's a merchant here who I believe the more you buy from, the richer, the more arrogant he gets.
From anything that
it's great. His clothing gets nicer and his posture gets more relaxed. He turns into more of a jerk.
Now, let's be honest.
Which is great because he starts off like all like
Jeremiah 11111. You see those numbers everywhere. As you said, like even the black flag
there's
goes 4 straight lines.
What is it? Is it
like 4 individuals?
Sweet Shalkior, the cat merchant.
As well, the numbers themselves are a reflection of. I don't know if themselves are single digits.
There's a town, or there's 2 houses at the end, kind of across the giant pit. The one on the left is the mansion that you have to go get the key for, but the house on the right, if you go in it, there's a cat that you can talk to that's also a merchant.
I don't think I ever met this cat.
Which they shall not be able to escape.
She's a great character.
Though they cry unto me.
Okay. Good items.
I will not.
You get a couple things that are really useful. Some of them are just PvP, but the big thing I always buy from her is there's a ring called the cat ring, which almost gets rid of fall damage.
Be done for. In the context
so that's interesting because there's if you never talked to her and got that, so that giant pit leads to a later area in the game, and there's depending on when you want to go down there, there's 2 ways to do it. If you get the ring, you can get the silver cat ring, you can go down early. Otherwise, you have to wait to meet the laddersmith.
Yeah, which is
which I imagine you did.
Yeah. Nothing. And I was a bit confused
about... It could also
be
said of the Native Americans.
Like, how much I was supposed to pay him.
Christianity.
And I got the small ladder.
Upon the
I was like, why would I give him more money? I got the small ladder and then immediately died. I was like, oh.
To be honest, I enjoyed it. A lot more than I thought I would.
Bastard.
More than Get Out, actually.
Yeah, and there's also, I should say, so you've got your Estus Sparks, which is essentially health potions. But you also, in this game, different from the first one, you have life gems, which are essentially a limited resource of health.
I also love that it got me thinking a lot especially
and,
afterwards.
You refill your Estus flask with these bonfires when you rest
I did feel it was a little long.
But life gems are an actual item.
Visiting the friend's house,
and they fill your health bar up slower.
Ticking more of the classic action horror tropes.
I was like, I'm a hoarder.
Shots
is the problem.
were fantastic, very well directed. The pace was okay.
Which was actually quite beneficial
because
a lot of the stuff in the DLC I needed
which I love. And the
a lot
script
for,
did keep me guessing.
Yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. At first I was a bit like, it's another thing to deal with. It's really so much going on in my head.
Of what the film was.
But actually, it was quite,
music was
quite
fantastic.
Useful,
the plucking of piano strings.
It supports the design. So it's something that in Dark Souls 1
makes you feel horrible.
You start with your 5 Estus flask, and you're making your way between bonfires or through a boss. And the Estus flask you have kind of represent a number of mistakes.
It also reminded me slightly
you
of the
can
Ghost
make
in the
just
Shell,
along the way, kind of holistically.
Music,
number of times you get hit. In Dark Souls 2, you have those Estus flasks which heal you a lot and they do it quickly. You also have life gems which are cheap and plentiful but heal you very slowly. And those are there to make to ensure that in any individual encounter you can go into that smaller kind of encounter at full strength. If you get through the encounter, you survive. You get to pop a life gem. Go to the next encounter at full strength, and you use the Estus to kind of emergency heal. So it's kind of a focus as opposed to kind of a longer, more spread out gauntlet. It's more individual, shorter, more intense encounters along the way. And you'll find that in the kind of encounter design because enemies will be grouped in kind of bigger mobs.
Which is fine, but I'm not sure
in Dark Souls 2, sometimes with more space between them. And that's a function of the healing, or that's, those two things play into each other, the healing system and the encounter design.
Because I totally didn't use the table. I was just using it without explicitly saying something, so that even the most casual cinema guy
it's like that's
will believe that they figured out what the film is about. But even if you've made it obvious,
I can kind of see how they put that together.
The idea that they've invested
that's a guess into it, right? Like that's as me putting on my game design hat. That's the best thing I can think of.
That itself,
but obviously there's no governing body. Like you could actually play through the game however you like.
Yeah. I don't think people will still feel the same way from us, which is a shame because I do truly think that it's actually a better film.
Well, I will. You just watch me,
and I think that I would like to see it.
So
again.
I did have a real problem with the warping with the warping back here to
viewing might be a bit
level up rather than doing it at any bonfire like the first day. And I think the main reason, not only was it like a time sink, basically, in terms of
clear message,
literally the amount of time it takes for you to walk there, do your thing, walk back, but also because it just kind of interrupted the flow of what I was doing and the certain tone that certain areas might be trying to invoke. I mean, sometimes it's like a welcome respite,
which is a new winter.
I was just like, it's like this weird little holiday break in the middle of the action. What did you think about it?
Patreon page.
I also don't like it. It's something. It is what you have to do in Demon Souls as well.
Bye.
And in Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 1 is the only game in the series, and in Bloodborne. Dark Souls 1 is the only one that allows you to level up at any bonfire, and I think it's a mistake. If I had to guess what they're going for, is they really want you to feel like Majula is this home base, and kind of enforce this feeling of taking a break and kind of quiet time and relaxation. But forcing me to do that doesn't work for me, and I found it pretty annoying.
Yeah.
So
same.
Agreed.
So after you Majula, and we'll speed up with the rest of them, we won't take that long on every single area. You go to the Forest of Fallen Giants, and again, as Gary was saying, it's quite open, so you can essentially kind of go where you need to go. I'm going to try and put these together loosely, narratively, how they function, and how I encountered them as well, but there's no like right or wrong answer as such. So but the Forest of Fallen Giants is usually where you go next, and it feels quite a big area, and I spent a lot of time here because obviously it's an early level and you die a lot, and it's a forest basically that leads to a castle that looks like it's been through the wars. Literally there's like huge swords embedded in the side, which is cool, obviously where they've had the fight with the giants, and there's a lot of doors and passageways to things you can't open yet. It's probably got my favourite shortcut maybe of the game here, and I think maybe because it was so early on that it might be my favourite, if that makes sense. And which is where you go down the ladder and you kind of do like a circle. You come back by that weird courtyard of exploding barrels,
Oh, sure, yeah.
And once you get through there, then you find a shortcut, which is cool. And it's in this area that you take on the first boss, the last giant, who has a bumhole for a face.
The giants in this do have gigantic anus faces for some reason, and I do not know why.
Yeah, it's really weird.
It's your job to give them squeaky bum. Like you've got to fight them until they get nervous.
Yeah. So, when we turned up, when he saw this guy walk in, he had squeaky face time. Is what?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what happened. He's got a collection of swords on his back, like a hedgehog. I thought at first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a fairly easy fight. It's a bit sad, and it reminded me actually that Shadow of the Colossus, or Colonossus. Which is a bad joke I stuck in there, which made me laugh. And he even rips his own arm off as a final attempt to destroy you. And there's puns, if you wait for that he gave himself a hand. He arms himself. And I thought it was a pretty good first boss, to be honest. It wasn't too difficult. It felt quite epic. And it was quite a good start, I thought. And it plays in a bit later because people say that there's a giant that you face later on, which we'll get to, and that this is the same giant.
Yeah.
So he recognizes you.
Yeah, that's why he hates you so much.
Yeah.
Which is super cool. And he plays, if you contrast him with like the Asylum Demon, right? In the first one, like this guy plays into the world a lot more. Like we spent the whole time, the Asylum Demon is a demon that's set there to stop people from getting out, but the demons are not on the same side as the people who set up the asylum in Dark Souls 1. It feels, slightly more arbitrary. In this game, we've gone through the area of this battle where people were fighting the giants. We'll come back to this area later, back in time, and we actually see the final giant that was the part of this war. Like, it's called the Forest of Fallen Giants. Like, my favorite thing that the series can do is you explore an area that tells a story, and then you like learn about someone, and then that person is the boss, and you've already kind of seen their works.
Yeah, like
you walk through and you get a good idea of what they are and who they are in the world.
Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, and the next boss I probably had the biggest problem with, which was the Pursuer. And I did actually meet him before because he gets dropped down by an eagle, like a superhero or something, or like Iron Man, and he killed me immediately. And so it took ages for me to kill this guy. I don't think he was necessarily difficult. I had to go away and grind a little bit to come back a bit stronger and have like better equipment, basically. But yeah, he's like a purely melee character. And there are like those crossbow things that you could try killing him with, but I didn't do that. And also I didn't want to use a human effigy and summon someone yet. I was like, that thing of like, I'm going to do it by myself. Yeah. Not going to have anyone help me. Getting really angry about it. But it was an all right boss fight, I thought. It's actually felt quite appropriate for that point in the game. And he does constantly keep coming back as well throughout, which is pretty cool.
It's a cool surprise. Like when he bubbles up from the ground. And I think he's a really great presentation.
Yeah.
Like I think he looks cool. It's good armor, good sword, cool shield. Yeah,
he's a good one. And it really freaked me out the first time. I can't remember where it was, but like when he came up from the ground, I was like, I don't need this right now.
Well, you can run.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah, he'll only fight you in that area. But that's a scholar change. In the original version, he only showed up in a couple areas, but they added some in this where he actually does pursue you.
He also tries to like piss off basically when he's getting low on health, which is really annoying. And it's like, come back, I want your souls, bastard. So after that, I remember getting taken by this eagle and taken to the Lost Bastille, and being a bit like, I'm going to go back. Like, I'm not ready for this.
You don't want a
area
sequence
yet.
break.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was like, I'm not really sure what's happening here. So I thought, well, I'll go back, and I did. Went back to Majula and did the how do you say it? Hades. Okay. Yep. Hades. Yeah, like a Swedish Tower of Flame. A very blonde, pretty girl. Heidi's Tower of Flame. And Yeah, so we talked about that a little bit. And then you fight the Dragon Rider, and he fights you with the spear and shield. It's another kind of melee thing, and that's something that I thought was pretty cool, but I read later that people had a problem with, is that it's a lot of, melee boss fights, basically. It seemed people didn't really enjoy that much, where it's like a lot of people with like swords and a shield, or a spear and a shield and all that.
Yeah.
But I quite liked it. Yeah.
Me too. I think the combat is at its best when you're fighting somebody whose abilities are at least a little close to your own. So somebody who does, and they're easy to read.
Yeah.
I think that in this series, the worst boss fights are the ones where the camera gets in your way, or you're fighting some kind of very gigantic beast and you can't see every part of it. So you get hit from things that are essentially off camera. Because you can't read the attacks. If you're just fighting a fella, at the very least, you know what they're doing.
Yeah. And especially with this one, like, he's quite slow. He signposts his moves quite early, I feel like. So he doesn't really cause that much of a problem for me, I felt like. And then, so for the next bit, I went back, basically, and did something else, because there was just this huge dragon which kept killing me immediately, and I think that was a Scholar of the First Sin change, right? That there was this dragon at the other side, outside the cathedral. But for the continuity's sake, there's a dragon which you kill, and you go through and you take on the old Dragon Slayer, the Dragon Slayer's dad, or something like that. But is this, people say this is is it Ornstein?
Yeah, it's yeah.
Do we know? So it's just hinted at, right? It's not like a fact.
Yeah, you pick up his soul, and it's different. There's a lot of kind of back and forth about this, because when we fight Ornstein, who's like one of the major bosses from Dark Souls 1, it is the area you fight him in Anor Londo is under an illusion. So we don't totally know exactly. And then there are things in Dark Souls 3 that refer to Ornstein that pretty much imply that this is a fake. The best way I can think of it is as like an Easter egg.
Right.
I was pretty into it actually being Ornstein initially, until kind of later text contradicted that.
Okay. I think it's quite interesting that there are Dragon Slayers, and yet there's one just like right outside his door.
Yeah, you're not doing a very good job. That's how you can tell he's a fake Ornstein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the idea that, instead of going out and slaying it, he's like made peace with it, and they're friends now. Yeah. A bit like Clint Eastwood, I was thinking, in Gran Torino or something.
Sure. And at the end after the fight, he sits down at a piano and he sings a song called Ornstein. That is about what he just did.
Exactly.
So, when someone first, I've never seen Gran Torino, but when someone first told me that it ends with Clint Eastwood singing a song about the movie.
Yeah, it's written by his son, I want to say, or something like that as well.
I did not believe them for anything. I was like, oh, that's fake. Like, you're pulling my leg. And then I looked it up on YouTube, and I was howling. Like, it's very funny to me that's how that movie ends.
Yeah, it's a really weird movie, and not to get too far into it, but it's like, racists can be okay too. Not that.
What that message has not aged super well.
Yeah.
But
I kind of I was like, at the time I was like, okay, kind of white old man who's like a racist and it's his own way or whatever, and then he's actually learnt, the ethnic communities are humans too, and it's like. Like, am I supposed to sympathise with him? I guess, like, and then he's like, now he's like a hero, okay, because he's got like a gun and he doesn't really care, and he's Clint Eastwood, okay, I've only seen it once years ago, but yeah. So sorry. So, No Man's Wharf, I did next, and I did the entirety of this up until the boss battle in one go, without dying or using another bonfire. I don't even know if there is another bonfire. And I didn't use the Pharos stone thing in the middle, which I didn't find out about till afterwards. So I was going through it. It's like pitch black, basically, and slowly taking on these monsters, thinking, where the fuck is that bonfire? Because I have now been playing for over an hour, and I'm like hanging by a thread here.
It's like probably the longest area in the game, or at least longest stretch between bonfires. Like there's not a second one, and there's a shortcut. There's a way to get back to the first bonfire, but there's not a second one.
Yeah. So that's where I actually died on the way back, if that makes sense. So luckily enough, that was right by that bonfire, so I could easily just go and pick up all the stuff, all the souls that I'd collected. But yeah, it's like this weird like pirate port with these cool like hideous creatures, which I actually quite liked. And then this boat comes in and you take on the Flexile Sentry, I believe it's called. And this is one of the bosses that I think I did on my first go. And I found him quite easy. I thought he looks quite cool. I like the way he's like a Siamese twin. And I'm always thinking, what's the other side of him thinking? He's just staring at the roof.
Just along for the ride.
Yeah, just like looking at the back of the wall going, when's it my turn?
Waiting for mace time.
Yeah. I like the idea that there's like, they could have their own spin-off, like a comedy like Stuck on You, but in the Dark Souls world. They're just trying to survive. But that's fairly easy. And then you can also, so this is another way of getting to the Lost Bastille. And I didn't really particularly like this place, to be honest. I thought it was a bit meh. Like there's the dogs that are from the first Dark Souls, those weird big idiots kind of lumbering around. But yeah, it's
like Darkman.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah.
And yeah, especially when you have to open that door to get to the boss, the Ruined Sentinels.
The clown car, like all the soldiers, royal soldiers, pouring out.
Just absolutely did my head in after a while.
Yeah.
I'm still having flashbacks of it. And I remember like by the end, and this is kind of what I ended up doing for especially a lot towards the end of the game, is I would just leg it down to the ladder that kind of around to the ladder that led up and basically went through that way, if that makes it. Basically ran away, essentially, just ran around them. Because I was just getting sick of it. But the Ruined Sentinels fight I actually quite liked. I like the idea that there's three of them.
I love this fight, and it's one of my favorite music tracks in the game.
Yeah, I have to listen back to
it. Big French horn energy,
right?
And that song.
Yeah, and it took me a couple of goes. I think I summoned someone to begin with, and then ended up just doing it by myself. And it felt like it was like a real, I mean, every boss battle was a stamina management one, but with this one, just the way they were moving and all this stuff, I was like, I can do this by myself if I'm just keeping my toes a bit, and you kind of don't go on the ground, straight away. And yeah, I quite enjoyed that fight, and it felt a bit, it felt tough. Like when I finished it, I was like, yeah, that really like, pat myself on the back kind of thing, with that one. So yeah, you make your way from there. You can go to Sinner's Rise. And when I played it, there was another Flexile Sentry at the bottom that was kind of annoying. And after a while, I just ran past. But then you get these like zombies that explode.
Yeah. Again, kind of bandaged characters who are kind of these dive bombers.
Yeah, mummies, I should say. Actually,
mummies. Yeah.
And I think they follow you as well, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, they'll chase.
It's really annoying.
Luckily, they go down pretty quickly, but yeah, those guys can be pretty obnoxious for sure.
Yeah, and when there's a few of them, when they start, ganging up, you're just like, you can die pretty quick. Well, like anything in this game, but still. And then we've got the Lost Sinner fight. So she's one of the four powerful souls, I believe, that they talk about, right? The Lord Souls, essentially. And you see the maggot thing, and that's from the first game. And what is that again? I can't remember the name of it.
It's like the chaos bug.
Yeah.
It's from, so this is, the four great souls that we fight in Dark Souls 2, are influenced or kind of descendants of the, four lords from Dark Souls 1. And this is this prisoner, the Lost Sinner, has inherited the chaos bug from the bed of chaos from the first game.
Right. So what do we know about her? It's a her, right? I think I read
it's a her.
Yeah.
out of most of the unfortunately, like out of the four, I think we know the least about her. And my memory is a little bit fuzzy in general. Like we know that so this is, the Lost Bastille, and Sinner's Rise. That is where the undead were being carted off, from Nomad's Wharf.
Okay.
So she is a prisoner from, again, another kind of culture's, desire to round up and deal with the undead, similar to how they did in Dark Souls 1, and you woke up in a jail. But we don't know a lot, at least as far as my memory goes, and it's been a while since I've been kind of deep in the text, but we don't know a lot about that specific culture.
Right.
I believe that this one may be concurrent. I think this might be actually part of Vendrick's current kingdom, and the reason I think so is because he also has Ruin Sentinels.
Okay.
In his castle.
Yeah, he does.
In Dranglake Castle. So I think that this might actually be what Vendrick is doing with the undead while him and his brother try to figure out a cure.
Right.
But other than being a powerful undead who's in this jail, I don't know much more about the Lost Sinner.
Yeah, it was a good battle. I think as well by this point, I found it fairly easy. I think some people had a real problem with it, but again, because it was another melee fight and I was kind of used to that, I didn't really have much of a problem with it by this point. But yeah, I didn't realise again till afterwards that if you go get a key or something, you can turn the lights on, basically, which make it a bit easier. But yeah, I just did the classic thing of like just put your shield up, move around, dodge when you need to, and stab in the back, which I feel like is a pretty safe strategy for every single Dark Souls boss.
Yeah. The kind of, I think the darkness is kind of the gimmick here. You can turn on the light, but when it's dark, it limits your lock-on range. You can't lock on from as far away, and she'll kind of do these like diving attacks from across the room. So that's kind of the gimmick. But she isn't particularly hard in this. Like most of the there's only one of the four principal kind of like major souls that I find particularly hard. And this, for the most part, I find them fairly doable.
Right.
Yeah.
So the next bit is the Belfry Luna, which I thought was a bit lame, to be honest, because essentially it's the gargoyles from the first game, but more of them. And it's part like this where people have their criticisms about it. I'm like, yeah, okay. It's like, let's do what we did in the first game, but throw more at it. And I had to summon people for this because I was just like, there's too much like going on. I was trying to do it methodically, and I was like, I can't do this like by myself. I need to get someone in to give me a hand to just take the heat off, because because there's 5 of them basically, I think.
Yeah. They keep spawning. Yeah.
It's just
there's more than 5 actually, I think. So like the area leading up to this is one of the several like kind of PvP kind of arenas in this. You can have this game essentially where you and the guardians of the tower stop people from getting up to the top to ring the bell.
Okay.
Basically, so it's almost like a different gameplay mode for PvP, but also happens to have a single player boss.
Right.
That you can get to up at the top. And yeah, the boss is no great shakes, right? Like they've already done it, and also it's not that creative just to add more bosses.
Yeah. Well, as well, afterwards, after you killed them, I went on, and it's just like a dead end. And I was like, there's nothing here. And I think there was the Bastille key was maybe in the first edition or whatever of the game. But yeah, in the School of the First Sin thing, I was just like, okay. It's pointless. So I found that really frustrating, that bit. And so the next bit talk about is Huntsman's Copse, what is a copse anyway?
Like a group of trees, a small group of trees.
I'm glad you know.
Yeah. But to be fair, forever I always thought it was copse for like my whole, basically my whole life until someone corrected me. So I was mispronouncing it forever.
Is it what? So what is it supposed to be?
Cops.
Cops is cops. Okay.
Yeah, cops.
Different from the TV show.
Different from the TV show and the law enforcement.
Yeah.
Principle or concept.
Though I like the idea that there are policemen working for a huntsman.
I like that too. I would pitch that.
Yeah.
The huntsman's cops.
Yeah. Imagine a police force working for Dog the Bounty Hunter. Is he still making TV shows?
I don't even know if Dog the Bounty Hunter is still with us. I think that might be an all dogs go to heaven kind of situation. Like, I think I might be gone. I don't remember.
Okay. That was, I felt like that was big for like 6 months. Not so much.
Yeah. Yeah. He definitely had an aesthetic. So like there was definitely, the kind of poodle haired, wide jean jacket fella.
And I like the way
for a minute.
At the end, it was all about finding Jesus.
Yeah, the bounty hunting Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
Huge bounty on the JC.
Yeah. Give him a smoke, tell them to find God, and that was the end of the episode. It's great. See, because we don't have that here, because, it would be weird.
Yeah. It's weird here as well. I promise.
Okay, good.
So
this the Huntsman Copse. I spent a lot of time here, mainly because there's that. I think it's the second bonfire. It's on the ground floor, like under that little weird stone bridge thing, whatever. I didn't realise there was another bonfire. So every time I wanted to do anything, I kept respawning at that same stupid bonfire. And it was driving me a bit mad. So the first place I went to, and the enemies here could be quite powerful as well, especially on your way up to the Undead Purgatory, which is where I went first. And you've got that little runway where they jump down at you. And even if you leg it through, they can still catch up with you. And one thing, that when you get to the Undead Purgatory, is that you've got a spirit there who won't let you pass this fog door. So there was a point where I was like trying to battle this spirit, and then I can just see behind on this bridge all the people that just run past, like chasing me. And I'm like, this isn't going to end well.
This isn't going to work.
Yeah. Damn it. But yeah, so, I did all that bit. And then, the Executioner's Chariot, which, I thought was pretty cool. And I like the fact that it's like a different enemy that's a bit more puzzle based. And the fact that, you've got this chariot going round, you have to hide in cover, but at the same time, there's these skeletons trying to kill you, which can overwhelm you quite quickly, but they're being brought to life by this necromancer. So the idea, how I did it anyway, was making a beeline for the necromancers, killing them off, then hoping the skeletons get killed by the chariot, if not killing yourselves. And then you basically pull a lever, it crashes, and then you fight the horse, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, just the horse.
I was expecting like the executioner, because it's his chariot or whatever, to get off and be like this big powerful skeleton. I'm like, I'm battling the horse. Okay.
Horse twist.
Yeah.
This is, I think, From has a weird relationship with puzzle bosses.
Yeah.
People tend not to like them. And I think, even though I end up liking some of them on presentation, I don't always like them mechanically. I think this is probably the best one they've done.
Yeah.
I think this is fun, and really, really cool concept, for it.
Yeah.
A nice change of pace.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It did, especially after that. Yeah, just running up there, basically, just trying to get there in the first place. Then realised that I had to explore a bit more of the copse, and I found the skeleton lords and went back to kill them. And they're quite funny because they're relatively weak, and it took me a few goes to realise that when you kill one, lots of skeletons spawn.
Yeah, they're load-bearing lords.
Yeah.
So, lord-bearing.
Yeah. Lord-bearing.
Yeah.
We have actual lords here as well, so I like the idea that there's a lord. Lord-bearing. He looks like a skeleton. And they've got the wheelie ones.
Bone wheels.
Yeah, bane of my life, they are. And I really feel like they're the show-offs, in the skeleton culture. They're the cool guys. They walk around with, they're like
like greasers, like 50s, like James Dean movie, Marlon Brando kind of Hey Speed Racer.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
They're just hanging off when they first start walking with them or whatever. It's like a boombox or a surfboard or something. I don't know. It's like, this thing? Yeah, I just got it upgraded. It goes about 20% faster now.
Zoom.
Yeah, check this out. Yeah. These stupid fucking spins. So the next area is Harvest Valley, the poison area, and I fucking hate poison. I hate it. I feel like it's a real gimmicky thing as well. It's I just didn't, and I also didn't realise that until afterwards that rolling through the poison is actually worse, which does make sense because it covers most of your body.
Gets most on you. I'm here to tell you, unfortunately, that FromSoft never stopped doing this, and never will. Never will. Every game has a big poison area. Yeah. Every single one.
Turtle slime from Ninja Turtles. The ooze. That was the real curse. So it wasn't this. Oh, where's this curse come from? It's because you've got nuclear ooze everywhere. Yeah.
The secret of the ooze is you're all going to die of cancer from this nuclear ooze.
Yeah.
So
have you ever thought about getting rid of the poison?
We've been telling you for a long time.
Yeah. He's just walking in it. And also what I love about it as well is that, it's that what's poisoning me? Is it the fumes?
Yeah.
Is it like acid? It's not like, if I dropped poison on my hand, it's not, as long as it didn't enter my body, I'd be fine, right? But, I just love that kind of video game trope that still do to this day.
The undead can't stop licking his lips. He's got very chapped lips if you look at him, so he's just he's getting it in, he's ingesting it somehow.
I don't know why, but that is so creepy. That is the creepiest image of just anyone just constantly walking along licking their lips.
Or like a skeleton doing it. Like, they don't have lips, but just like licking their teeth like they're licking their lips all the time.
Yeah. It's like I saw recently the Evil Dead 2, one of the Evil Dead 2 covers, and which is, this is so random, but like a skull looking back, like from the side, but it's got eyeballs and like a tongue or something. Mm-hmm. And it's the first time I looked at it and went, oh, that's a bit weird, isn't it? Like,
the eyes stayed.
Yeah.
Well, did you ever play, there's one of my favorite video games of all time. It's called Planescape Torment.
No.
And you get a companion that is a skull that floats around that has intact eyeballs.
It's weird.
And it's super weird.
It's like they're constantly surprised.
Yes.
By everything, whereas they're licking their lips.
Yeah.
So I remember kind of being at this point. This is where I was starting to kind of tire out, and I found myself rushing the levels whenever I could, like kind of making sprints to like another bonfire, just seeing how far I could get. The poison was kind of was part of that. And I took on the covetous demon. And I think I killed him on my second try. I think there's a bonfire nearby, if I'm not mistaken. And that was fairly easy. People don't seem to ever have a problem with him, I think. Didn't you say that he eats you and can spit out your clothes or something like that?
He can. If he grabs you, he puts you in his mouth, and then he spits you out with all of your equipment unequipped.
Right.
So it doesn't, it hurts you, but it doesn't, the bigger deal is that you have to go into a menu, and there's no pause. You have to go into a menu and put back on your clothing. Or at the very least your sword, or your weapon.
Don't know why, it just really cracked me up, the fact it's like you can't pause, and he's like, okay, give me a second.
Something the little trick. Yeah.
Let me just get my sword out. Don't look. So next is Earthen Peak, and I will try and rattle through these. So sorry if again this is going too fast. Which is basically like a poisonous pathway to the boss. And I tried so many times to kill her until I basically had to look it up and be like, I'm not even doing any damage. And realizing that wheel thing that I'd run past earlier, I had to set it on fire or destroy it or something to stop the poison flowing into her room. And then she was a lot easier. But, do they signpost this anywhere? Because I don't know how I'm supposed to figure that out.
No, it's horrible signaling.
Where do they do it? Like, is it just...
They don't.
Oh, right, okay.
They don't signal it at all. And then when they did the Scholar version, they have an undead... you can summon someone, a character there, who will go and point at it for you. It's so sloppy. It's so sloppy. I don't know what they were thinking with that, because it doesn't even look like the windmill is made of wood.
Yeah.
Like it's made of stone. It doesn't look like it would set on fire. It's exceptionally bad signaling. It's like one of the sloppier things the company has ever done.
Yeah, terrible. and it really wasted a lot of my time. But yeah, she's basically some poison, sexy snake lady that looks a bit like Medusa or something. And so the next stage was the Iron Keep, which for me took me absolutely ages. And I know there's that point of contention whereby you get you get a lift up, and then
the elevator
up for ages, a really long one, and then you're suddenly like in lava. And I think it was established that it was actually a what's the word, like a, not cavern, but yeah, like a what's the word, what am I looking for, like a pit.
It's basically like a problem with, like, I think that it was likely a problem, like a miscommunication with concept art with that, you know. But there are a couple of non-Euclidean kind of spaces in Dark Souls 2 where it doesn't make sense. Like later we're going to go through on our way to Dringlake Castle, and it's daytime, and we go through a tunnel, and when we come out it's raining and it's nighttime.
Yes,
you know,
I remember that now.
You know, if you want to be very charitable to this, you can kind of chalk it up to us losing our memory. Like in the early cutscene, you know, it says we're losing our family, we're losing our memory. There's a character in this game called Lucatiel, who is kind of the biggest NPC character that you run into, and one of the most developed storyline. And her whole storyline is about losing her mind and kind of that like terror of dementia and stuff. So I tend to, when I'm feeling charitable, you know, I never got really bothered by the elevator thing, right? Like some people got very mad about it. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. If I'm feeling very charitable, it's like, well, this is my character losing their mind. Like I'm going hollow. A lot of these spaces don't make sense. This is that kind of surreal, dreamy landscape kind of thing. Again, similar kind of to Things Betwixt.
Yeah.
Where you're in this weird tree void, and you go through a cave, and you're on a sunny beach.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's interesting. Because, yeah, it's one of the things that I don't normally pick up. I'm not that bothered about stuff like that. But it's just, if they didn't make the elevator so long, I mean, I imagine it's a loading thing or whatever, but I wouldn't have even thought about it, if that makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, just because you felt like it was building up to something, and then you're like, what? Where am I? But yeah, I had a real problem with this area. I don't know if that's just me or if it's generally considered a tough area.
I think this is probably the hardest area in the game. You know, it's extremely difficult. Just really, really harsh, really pretty long. Getting the secondary bonfire requires fighting a very tough boss.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to fight the smelter demon, which is a hard boss.
Yeah. Hard.
To get to the midpoint bonfire. The only thing I think is not, you know, particularly like difficult about it is the end. You know, the old Iron King I don't find super difficult.
No, he was super easy. I like the fact that he's just hiding behind a wall. I'm just hiding behind a wall. It's like that was my tactic. Just going, I don't know, like have a crafty fag or something, and then whilst he's raging.
He's made his arena is his problem. It's like the end boss of Bubble Bobble. Like if he just got rid of those platforms, you'd never beat him.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, it's literally. He's like, but he's decided this is it. This is where I'm gonna hide out, and I'll be fine here. But yeah, I basically up to that smelter demon point, that was just unpopulated. By the time I defeated the smelter demon, there was nothing left. So it was just a case of just walking through. That was like how much trouble I had with it. And those fucking turtle things that just fall backwards or you can't block. Oh my God. Just so annoying.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about the Belfry Soul until afterwards. So I never actually went there. Is it any good? Is it a bit pointless?
It's actually really similar to the other Belfry area with the gargoyles, except without a boss.
Okay.
So you can go up there and get some items, but it's kind of a PvP game. You know, where there's an area you can go and ring. It's not worth your time.
Right.
So it's a thing for multiplayer, but not for single player, really.
Okay, good. I didn't miss anything
there. Yeah, absolutely.
So I believe, what I did next is kind of go through the shaded woods area, and I didn't really know what I was doing here. I was just kind of walking around a lot and killing things, and then I couldn't go into this door or do X, Y, Z. I did end up in the Doors of Pharos area, which I can't remember is connected or not. And yeah, this is the area you were talking about earlier where you can set up like mini traps and stuff, right?
This and the Grave of Saints.
Right. Yeah.
The area of the Rat Covenant are both PvP kind of funhouse areas.
Right.
But are better integrated into the world than like the Belfry areas, I think.
Yeah.
They have bosses, even though the boss here is bad.
Awful.
Like I think that just like probably one of the worst bosses in the game. And it's not the Royal Rat Vanguard.
Yeah, it's the Royal Rat Authority that's here in the doors.
I think that is this one the Authority and the other one's the Vanguard?
Yeah.
I can't remember. There's two rats.
Yeah, there's basically the dog thing.
Yeah, big shitty rat dog, and then the one that's lots of little rats I'm okay with.
Yeah.
The big rat one I don't like.
Yeah, which is the one that's here. I mean, I used up so many of those stones opening these random doors and them leading to like nothing. And I was like, well, one's got to have something, and it's like a gambling thing. Where it's like, if I keep throwing money at it,
sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to come through in a second.
Yeah.
Really annoying. But yeah, the Royal Rat Authority, it's like a bad Sith fight. It felt like, and who gave him the authority?
I do not respect your Royal Rat Authority.
Yeah. Who does he think? He's not even a rat. I don't know what he is. Policing the rats, whatever he's doing.
No. Not worthwhile. Yeah, this is a horrible fight, mostly because he has those little critters that run up, the smaller rats that can give you toxic.
Yeah.
Right in the beginning. If you can take care of those guys, it's really doable. But unless you have like an AoE spell, it's really hard to do. This is one of the worst bosses in the game. Yeah. Terrible.
And it feels like a lot of these are just optional, and I'm not really getting much out of them, if that makes sense. Especially with this one. Yeah, so there's the Brightstone Cove. I can't even say this. Seldora.
Yeah, Seldora. Correct.
Cool. And I believe, like when it came out, I think it looks like some battles just happened, if I remember rightly. And then there's this random boss, the Prowling Magus. Magus?
Yeah, the Magus. Yeah, one of the things is you mentioned the Covetous Demon as well, and like that enemy and this enemy are both fairly easy. And sometimes people get very frustrated that they're bosses because you want to have a reasonable challenge with a boss. I wish that they just didn't give them title cards.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Dark Souls 1 had mid bosses, right? Like you had the boar.
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that. And this could have been like that. Like this could have just been an encounter in a room. But because they give it that boss title card, you kind of raises your expectations.
Yeah.
Because it's really just kind of like an interesting encounter. You're seeing all these people, these pews. They're praying to these priests, these priests and priestesses here. And it's just a set piece, for you to fight through. But the fact that they give it a health bar raises your expectations too much.
Yeah, and I literally think it took me about 10 seconds to kill them both. Just went in sword flying, basically. And I don't even understand what's happening here. Like, what are they? What are they doing?
There's not a lot of story to them. Like the best, so Seldora, Brightstone Seldora is this, that first area we go to. It's not necessarily like a battle that happened there, but it's almost like an army is poised. This is like an area where they were mining the stone and mined so deeply that there is a dragon. Like we'll run into that later. And kind of the soul kind of infected things, ultimately making the Duke of this area, his pet, turn into this great old one kind of boss that we're going to fight.
Right.
But this is just the religion. This is the church for this area.
Right.
And that's we don't get a lot of story about what that religion is like, but this is just, if this is a town, or this is an area, we have the camp where all the miners work and stuff. Up above, and then where they sleep rather, and then we go down to the mines where we show people where they're working, and then we go into where actually the Duke kind of supervised, and his pet spider got out of control. So, to say the least.
Yeah. I like the use of the term prowling, like he's a sexual deviant as well.
Yeah, the troll and magus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cruising magus.
Yeah. So I ended up sprinting my way to the Freya boss here. I tried to do it methodically and like properly, and after a while I was just like, I hate this level. I was like, I just kind of want to get out of it. So yeah, all the spiders, I dodged all that, went straight to the Freya fight. And at first I was like, man, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But when I kind of figured out my positioning, it wasn't actually that bad. She's basically this big spider with other little spiders. And if you can get rid of those like quickly, because they can kind of overwhelm you a bit as well. I thought it was, it was okay. She's got a head either side and you basically just chop her head off both sides, if I'm right, if I remember rightly. But she's another Lord Soul as well, I believe. And I don't know. What did you think?
To me, out of the four principal ones, this is the one I have the hardest time with.
Right.
Just because it is really easy to get staggered by one of those little spiders, and then get hit by her beam attack, which will one shot you if you get zapped by it. But generally, not so bad. I think the idea of this, after you beat her, you go back in the cave and you find the Duke, of the titular Duke's dear Freya, and he's hollowed. And then you see the little spider cage with, the bars bent.
Yeah.
Like something's broken out of it. I think that's really cool, like environmental storytelling.
Yeah.
Just thinking like way back in the day, it was a problem that could be just kind of stepped on.
Yeah.
And then now over the centuries or what have you, it's become this gigantic brood mother that's taking up residence in this big, dragon that is, webbed up.
Yeah.
Up in the rafters and stuff. I think that's all incredibly cool.
Yeah.
While the fight itself is nothing super special to me.
Yeah, I didn't mind the fight. But I liked that thing of like, you just go in and it's just like old, library or his office basically. And those little touches, as you said, is, it just kind of gives it a bit of variety. And I really enjoyed, that aspect of it. So the next part I was going to talk about is going down to the Grave of Saints, where, as you said, this is the Royal Rat Vanguard, which is just basically a big rat, a strong rat, not even that big, not even that much bigger than the others. And then you come up against the King Rat, or whatever.
Yeah, he has a mohawk.
Yeah. And that one, So you kill him, and then you talk to who is it? Who's the rat that he's protecting, who's basically pissed off with all the humans.
The Lord Rat, whose name is escaping me right now, but he's the king of that covenant, the covenant for this half of the funhouse, or this specific funhouse.
Yeah,
he runs that. So you can.
Did you ever have a show? It was British, but I don't know what kind of filters through there or not. In the 80s, called Roland Rat.
Nope, I don't know what the Roland Rat is.
It's basically, it's like, his whole thing's like, hey, rat fans. It's a kind of kids TV show morning thing. But, and he was supposed to be basically this cool rat. And, I don't know why, but in my head, that's who. I'll put a link to it, but it's, in my head, that's who it is, which is just stupid. But, the idea is this talking king rat.
We had a rude dog.
I remember Rude Dog and the Dweebs.
Yeah, Rude Dog, exactly, Rude Dog and the Dweebs, voiced by like Yakko Warner, like that guy. And I watched one of those recently on VHS tape and was struck and kind of appalled by how polite Rude Dog is. Like, I didn't remember how much that cartoon is about him running a shipping business and being fair to his employees.
Yeah, he's not even really in
which
it
is
that
the opposite
much,
of
if I
Rude.
remember rightly.
No, he's basically a middle manager type at this thing, and it's mostly focusing on his friends, none of which are rude.
Yes.
Not one person is anything less than polite. It's very strange.
They are a bit dweeby, though.
Yeah, they are absolutely dweeby. Yeah.
I like the idea, because I remember Rude Dog, like neon green, neon pink, but it was always his eyes, which looked weird to me, because they weren't like proper, if I remember rightly, they weren't like proper eyes. Maybe it's a combination of that. But I like the idea that this rat guy's like just pissed off with people coming down to his rat city. And he doesn't really seem to be too bothered that you're there and you've just slaughtered a whole bunch of his like mates to get there to see him. But he's like a covenant leader, if I'm correct. I don't know does he give you any kind of buffs or anything? Is he a particularly good one? A good covenant?
No, all of the covenants, like when you kill people in PvP, you tend to get like a trinket item, and you can turn those into the leader for either weapons or spells. None of which I really engage with very much. Like I think I'm like you, where I don't do the PvP very often. We have for each season, when we're doing a Bonfireside Chat for each season of the show, we would attempt to do PvP for a while, so we can do an episode about it, just because it is a big part of the games, and we want to try to be all inclusive of things. But it was always a sideways fit. Like neither of us are that interested in it,
right?
So
yeah. It's good, I appreciate that it's when people go, it's half the game or something like that. It's like, yeah, okay.
It's a big game. It contains multitudes.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then you can make your way to the Gutter, which is kind of like the Blight Town, I suppose, of Dark Souls 2. Though it's a lot smaller, and I think it's a lot more manageable as well. And, yeah, just to kind of sprint through this a little bit, you get through to the Black Gulch, which is, again, like another poison heaven. And I didn't realise that there was a second bonfire closer to the actual boss. So I had to make that run through all these like spitting poison things to get to the rotten each time, which was really annoying because you've lost half your bloody health before you've even stepped through the gate. And I'm right in thinking that the rotten is what people use when they do speedruns, right? To kind of... they go there first. Am I right? I can't remember what the deal is.
Yeah, there's a. I don't know if this is I think the current speedrun meta like uses a glitch, but something you can do is to get into the final set of areas, you need either all 4 Lord Souls or a certain number of souls.
That's right. Yeah, it's like 1 million or something like that.
Yeah. And you can go to the Rotten. The Rotten's really pretty predictable once you know him. So you can fight him at low levels, and you can use a bonfire aesthetic item, which I mentioned earlier, to keep fighting him on further new game plus cycles to get that 1 million souls. So even though I've never speedrun Dark Souls 2, when I do play, I do tend to fight the Rotten a few times, just to get a souls boost and to just to kind of power up my character a little bit early on.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's that much too bad of a boss, really, either. It was more the run-up that kind of annoyed me. But he's basically... He looks like Pizza the Hut from Spaceballs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's a big pile of corpses. Or like in Symphony of the Night, there's a character called Grand Falloon.
Yep.
That's a big pile of corpses kind of jammed together. He's got that kind of look to him. So
a beautiful creature. I do find it quite funny that... we catch him while he's in the middle of some DIY.
Yeah. he's working on his Etsy page.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Just getting really annoyed. So now you've got your 4 souls, 4 Lord souls, and you can head to Drangelic Castle, finally. So you go through the Shady Woods again, make your way inside the castle, and this is where you start seeing stuff to do with the Queen, I think, and people are talking about the Queen, and it becomes a bit more obvious... what's going on, and that she's evil, basically. So once you're in the castle, you kill 2 dragon riders, which again is a bit lame because it's essentially just who you just
fought. Done it.
Yeah, someone else. But okay, great. And you take on further in the castle. You take on the Looking Glass Knight, who I thought was quite cool. It was one of my favourite bosses of the game, and the reason why part of it is because his shield can make a copy of you. I believe it can also summon other players. I think I've listened to that on your podcast that he can bring people in.
Yeah.
Which is different.
You can be the Looking Glass Squire if you set up to invade that area. He doesn't make a copy of you. He can make, there's kind of 2 generic fellas he can make, or he can pull in another player.
Oh, I thought it was a copy of me. Maybe that happens. Oh, that might happen somewhere else when there's like a mirror. I don't know. Can't remember.
It might have just been somebody who was using a weapon similar to yours.
That's probably what it was.
Yeah. I don't think... I've always thought that it would be cool. This is... I don't want to get too much in the weeds because you haven't played Dark Souls 3 yet, but I wanted the Dark Souls 3 end boss to be something like that. I thought that would be really cool. But as far as I know, there's not a thing where you fight an exact copy of yourself.
Right. Yeah.
In the game.
Okay. Yeah, I think it might be because I think I had a great sword. So maybe it was just someone who had a great sword as well. But at the time, I thought it was me. And I was like, that's cool because he's got like a mirror for a shield and he's made a copy of me. Melee based again. But yeah, I like this one. So by this point, I was a bit like, why is this taking so long? What's happening? I went through to the Shrine of Amana, and that's quite magic based. So I had a bit of trouble with that because magic kind of gets through my shield and my armor for the most part. So I had to rush around as much as possible, trying to kind of dodge these magic bullets or whatever they are. Then came up against the Demon of Song boss, which is weird, really strange looking creature. Didn't have too much of a problem with him either, but yeah, he was one of the more interesting looking creatures. I thought, because he kind of like opens up his, he opens up his mouth to reveal a face or something like that.
It's like a weird skull creature that's wearing a rubber frog suit.
Yes.
Like a munch.
It's cool. I think it looks cool. And you make your way down to the undead crypt. And I was making a beeline for everything by this point. So I was really trying to I was like, come on, end of the game. Here we go. Let's do this. Which probably isn't the best way to play Dark Souls and can be very detrimental. But I was focused. And then, these bloody bells, which awaken these like powerful spirits, essentially. And especially when you're on that final corridor, and then like at separate points as you're trying to make your way through, like another zombie comes to ring the bell. You're just like, fuck's sake, stop ringing the bloody bell.
Yeah, it's a tough stretch because I generally just run past that, but it's difficult even to run past that one.
Yeah.
But it's cool because at the very least, I think that Velstat's a really great boss.
Yeah.
I love this. I love the music track and I love the theming on this guy. I think using a gigantic bell as a hammer is a really cool idea.
Brilliant. Yeah, I really like this.
And a really good design.
Yeah, he just looks cool as well. And then after he dies, I remember seeing something in the background and remembering, did you ever watch the film Wreck? As in, there was an American one, but specifically the Spanish one.
No, REC.
Yeah.
I've heard of it, but I have not seen it.
Yeah, I really liked it. Like, it's a bit maybe of its time was found footage and all that stuff, which is kind of old hat now. But, the Spanish one was first. I remember watching that at the cinema and like right at the end, spoiler, but, it's night vision or whatever, so you can't really see what's going on. And there's this really like tall, lanky thing kind of walking around, and you're like, "Fuck!" And so when you see this, I didn't know what it was, and I can just see something walking around. It fucking freaked the life out of me because I just got that flashback of watching Wreck, and obviously I've just come up against this boss, and I'm like, "Well, there's no bonfire around," so I googled who it was. I was like, "I'm not taking any chances," and that's Vendrick.
It's a really pretty great moment, I think, because you spent the whole game hearing about Vendrick, and you expect him to be this figure of power, this kind of great king, and you go into this room and you just see him walk in these sad circles to this very like depressing music.
Yeah, doesn't attack you.
Like he's not aggressive. Like you can fight him. He is a boss that you can fight, but he's not mandatory, and he's mostly a figure of like kind of being pathetic.
Yeah. So I didn't realise because later on, before I took on, I thought this might be the final boss, but later on, before taking on the Queen, I just ate all my souls, basically, not realising that to kill Vendrick, you had to have like a certain number of giant souls and all that stuff. So I'd basically screwed myself over. So I never got to kill him. But
it's not like a wonderful fight or anything. You didn't miss too much. Good. It's an okay fight, but it's not great.
Yeah, that's good to know. So I went back to the castle and to the throne room and took on the Throne Defender and Watcher. And I thought this was it. I thought this is the final thing. And I really enjoyed that fight. I was like, it's a bit like, Ornstein and Smaug again. And I thought, this is like an all right final boss battle. I'm enjoying this. And then I killed them and it was like, okay.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, the game. I love Dark Souls 2 in retrospect a lot. When we were playing it, me and Cole, like at some point, I very distinctly remember us like texting each other and being like, "This just keeps going." Like, you know, and there's still stuff that's good, right? So like after you do that, you head towards Aldia's Keep. And I think as far as an environment goes, Aldia's Keep is incredibly cool. Like I love a mad science lab. I love a monster zoo. And this is both.
Yeah.
Of those things. I think that's really, really cool. And then you go through it and you go to the dragon area.
Yeah.
Which is just like breathtakingly beautiful, like just really cool looking area.
Yeah.
Like there's still cool things coming, but it's stretched out, you know, and then once you throw in the DLCs, it's like, this is a very long game. It ends up being the longest of all of the entire series.
Okay. Yeah.
In a way that's a little kind of tricky.
Yeah. That was,
You know?
just when it was like the next area, I was just like, oh man, come on. But yeah, like the dragon shrine after the dragon area, I literally just walked up to the dragon and everyone was bowing. So I wasn't sure. I was like, okay, good. Cause I kind of need this. And I got basically the time travel thing. And I had to look up the next steps because I was like, man, I've got to kind of get to the end of this game. And I went back to just that giant's memory back in the forest of fallen giants. The specific one you needed to get, and I actually used my bonfire. I put King Kong bonfire aesthetics, but ascetic, that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, like ascetic or ascetic.
Yeah, and that's where I basically grinded a lot of my souls. Was there? I just kept that memory sequence going because the people dying around you that you don't even have to kill. You get quite a few souls from that. Yeah, and I didn't bother going to the other giant memories. Was there anything I missed out on with those?
No, I mean, just like a little bit of, items, right? So like, soul items and, like a couple weapons and a couple other bonfire aesthetics, things like that, effigies, and then a little bit more backstory on that war.
Yeah.
But not a whole lot. Like you basically did not miss too much.
Good. I also didn't go to the Dark Chasm of Old. I didn't even realize that was a place.
That's a whole really weird optional. The shame of it, right? So there's a very long optional quest chain about Dark Diver Grandal, I think his name is,
right?
Where you can access this very hard challenge area, and if you get through it, there's a really wonderful boss,
right?
At the end of it called Dark Lurker. That is one of the strongest bosses in the game as far as a fight goes. Like there's not a lot of story, but it's just a really fun fight. But you have to jump through so many hoops. And on replays, I tend not to do it because even though I want to fight that boss, I don't want to do all the hoops.
Yeah.
And it's Hoop City. It's basically NBA Jam. So
he's on fire.
Yep. He's on dark.
Yeah. So, once you get whatever this giant was holding, which I still didn't understand, you can go back and take on Nashandra. I summoned people for this and took her out fairly quickly, which was quite good. And I had loads of human effigies, so I thought, why not? Treat myself.
Sure, yeah.
Get a couple of mates on board who I've never met before, but and she was really, there was three of us, so it wasn't too much of a big deal. Then the giants or the golems, I should say, whatever, moved. You walk into the kiln and you sit in the little booster seat.
Yep. And that's the basic ending of Dark Souls 2. There's like another, if you've been following this quest line with Aldia, who we didn't mention, but depending on which version of the game you're playing, you can meet this character, who is the brother of Vendrick. And if you do follow that quest line, you can fight him after you fight Nashandra.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a cool fight. Like it's if you ever revisit the game, it's worth giving it a chance.
Right.
It's a neat fight, and he that introduces the other ending, because in Dark Souls 2, as we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, like it's kind of saying that it's a cycle. It doesn't matter. Dark Souls 1, when you get to the end, you beat the end boss, you get to choose whether you light the flame or let it go out. In Dark Souls 2, since Dark Souls 2 happened, that implies that the choice you made at Dark Souls 1 doesn't matter. So when you sit on the chair, you just sit on the chair. Right. But if you go through this secondary step and you beat Aldia, you leave the chamber. You say, I'm not going to do either of these things. I'm going to keep looking for my own path and try to actually fix this and break the cycle.
Okay.
which is a very hopeful for Dark Souls, like a very hopeful ending.
Yeah, because the standard ending is dark, as you can.
Yeah, it's pretty bleak.
Imagine.
Yeah,
it's just like he's just going to sit in there.
Yep.
Like, well done. Now sit in there and don't come out. Yeah, so, and then you get the DLC. I will be super brief on this, but you've got the Crown of the Sunken King, which I actually did last, and I rushed through this again, which you can do, once you know the way, until you get to kind of like the crypt bit. That was quite cool. I thought the fact that you smash the statues to make the spirits physically appear. It's got a cool shortcut to the first bonfire, which was good. But yeah, you take on Alana, the Squalid King, who is quite difficult. And all these DLCs are like super difficult. I had a real problem jumping from the main game to these immediately. I was like, man, I really need to level up to get through these.
End game content for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then I took on Sin the Dragon. And this is probably one of my favourite fights, actually. I summoned a couple of people and it was just chaotic. It felt really epic. And they were really trying to help me out because I'm a strength build. I spent most of the time just running around trying to get a shot in before he moved again, which was quite funny. So it's quite a long fight, but yeah, he was a good boss. And dragon bosses are quite cool, as and of themselves anyway. Crown of the Iron King, I felt was okay for a while. I found this really difficult. I quite like the weird totems that you can destroy, but there was one bit where like there was a big room, I don't know if you remember, and there was like a giant spouting lava guarding this door, and there was a few normal enemies, and there were some guys holding the barrels. It just took me ages just to get through that one specific bit, but yeah,
it's really challenging. Like if I know all three of these are really challenging, and I like the theming of all of these and kind of what they are doing to kind of explore these other kings, right? Like these other people who came through before Vendrick, these kind of other lands, and that we're on top of this, because essentially what you're doing is traveling through time with these as well. And I like what they do as far as, so in the first one, in the Sunken King, you fight Alana, the Squalid Queen. So you actually fight that version, that kingdom's evil queen, right? That fragment of the abyss. In this one, the evil queen is not a boss. You're doing those little totems. Like you're actually like, she's been broken apart and you're neutralizing the parts as you go through that, which I like. But there are some absolutely brutal encounters for sure. And it contains two boss fights, like one, in which the community really loves and one that only I love, which is Sir Alan, which is the optional boss for that, which is a great fight. Like everyone loves that, including myself. And then Fume Knight, which everyone hates and is widely considered to be the hardest boss fight in the Dark Souls 2 zone, which I like, but most people do not.
I didn't mind it. I did Fume Knight. I think you can only do Fume Knight before Sir Alan anyway, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was so hard. And it was one of those things that when I did it, I was like, that was really cool. But I don't know, I couldn't do that by myself. I had to summon people for that. I've no idea how someone could do it by themselves.
It's just tons of delayed hits. Like he's got a lot of really strange timings on his swings, and figuring those out to me was very fun. Like, but it is frustrating, and he hits like a truck, and he's pretty aggressive. So. Yeah.
The Sir Alan one, I did really enjoy as well.
It's like a great duel.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so. And just the history behind it. Because I know it's supposed to be like he's Vendrick's mate or whatever that got his right hand man or something along with Velstadt. And just quite enjoyed that kind of aspect to it, and that you kind of travel through time and then travel through time again, like even further in time. If I've got that right. The Crown of the Ivory King, Snowy Kingdom, and I was just such an idiot. So like I was immediately trying to kill this invisible beast until I realised you had to turn around and go the other way to pick up the thing so you can see it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know
it's kind of, they only have so many, I feel like gimmicks that they haven't tried yet, right? It's like the invisible enemy is one that they're doing here. But this one, I love this is my favorite of the three And I like that things like, yes, the boss turns visible afterwards, but I love the level changing once things have thawed out.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just get easier. It's not like you just get access to new places. Like, enemies thaw out, and there are new pathways for them to ambush you. And then the ending of this, where you fight the Ivory King, and you can unlock those soldiers to come with you, and you can summon people with you, and then it's this huge group melee, and like going down there with 7 people with you, or 6 people with you is really pretty unique.
Yeah.
To Souls, like doing this kind of group fight, and it just feels awesome to roll deep in this.
Yeah, it's exactly how I did it. And I remember, like, when he comes out in this pool of light and defeating him, it was just like looking around to like the other guys that had done it with me, like giving like a fist pump or something thing. And I felt really like, we did it together as a team, even though it's my game essentially. But I really felt like, we really worked for that and we did it. It's a good, and that was the last one. No, it wasn't the last one. The Sin was the last one. I think that's the second one I did. But really great final boss battles. I know, as you were saying, Fume Night is a little bit, people didn't really like generally, but I did like it as well. And I thought each DLC was really tough, but it did have some really great final boss battles, in my opinion. So that's it. That's the end of a really, really long game. Too long, some may say.
It definitely too long. There's too many areas. There's certainly things that could be cut. Like, I have a lot of affection for Dark Souls 2, and a lot of it comes from some of these imperfections, that it has. Like, I think it's got kind of a weirder atmosphere than the other games in the series, and it ties into the other games in the series in very kind of strange, indirect ways. But there are just so many things that I just, like kind of a big, very affectionate sloppiness that I have for it. That there's some tricks that they haven't done before. I love how you can change the difficulty yourself. I love how wide the build variety is. I played through it a bunch of times, and each time it's different because I'm playing a different avatar, so I have different verbs. Mm-hmm. And the DLCs, I think the 3 DLCs have really great, even though it's sometimes very harsh, but have very great level design. Just really interesting areas to explore, with mostly fun encounters and cool kind of gimmicks. Like, we didn't talk about, but I love the guys in the Sunken King, where you are facing the kind of the soul of the warrior, but you have to find where their body is.
Yeah, and smash
and destroy that. Like, I think those are really cool. There's just a lot of stuff like that I think is neat.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It was, I did feel like Dark Souls 1 was more succinct and compact and felt,
way more so.
Yeah.
Like, Dark Souls 1 is way closer to perfect. Like, I like Dark Souls 1 a lot more than Dark Souls 2, but I still love Dark Souls 2 because of those weird kind of imperfections.
Yeah. So are there any, because there's a bunch of side characters and side quests, are there any, not to go too deep into this again because time's ticking on, but are there any kind of, side stories or people that are quite interesting that kind of you stick out in your head?
We talked real briefly about Aldia. I love all of that stuff, with Aldia, with the second ending they introduced to the main game. And the idea of this, again, this kind of scientific approach to this mystical problem, which I dig. And then we also mentioned Lucatiel, and Lucatiel's got this really great, sad story. She is going hollow. When you see her, she wears a mask, because under there it's probably like hamburger. It's just like you. And her, as you meet her throughout the game, you see her slowly lose her memory and slowly lose her identity. And it's just very tragic. It's very sad.
Yeah.
For her. And I think that's a really great story. I mean, I think Dark Souls 1 has way better side stories and NPCs than Dark Souls 2, but Dark Souls 2 has at least one that can hang with Dark Souls 1, and it's Lucatiel.
Yeah. There's also, is it Pate?
Pate. Oh, yeah. Pate is actually really, Peter Serafinowicz.
Yeah. So
voiced. Yeah, Pate and Creighton are really cool, too.
Yes, I actually know his brother, James.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, and I remember I worked on a show called The IT Crowd, If you ever saw that, I'm in it. I'm in it a bit as well. And
neat.
Yeah, which is quite funny.
That's awesome.
And during that time, I spent a lot of time with Graham Linehan, who's the director. He's been in a bit of trouble on Twitter lately, but still. And he invited me around. I used to play poker a lot, and so did he. And we used to talk about poker and whatever. And he invited me around for a poker night, and it was James and his girlfriend at the time, and also a guy called Benny Wong, who went on to be in all the Marvel films. He's Doctor Strange's mate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is really weird. Yeah. And I specifically remember he was getting really annoyed. He's a lovely guy. He'd just been in a film which hadn't been released yet, which is a Danny Boyle one called Sunshine. And everyone was like, oh, this is it, your big break or whatever. And and then he's obviously like, he put on loads of weight because he was in a Netflix series, the Marco Polo one. And he basically wasn't able to shift it, so he stayed like that. But I mean, he won't remember me. But so there was a moment where I was just like on the outskirts of this group,
the Peter Serafano verse.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it worked out for him not dropping that weight since he got to be Wong.
Yeah, exactly. So, and he's that's it. It's set for life now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I know the one thing is with New Game Plus, I believe, rather than it being more difficult, there's some actual differences, right, in what happens in the story itself. I don't know if there's any that, stick out again in your memory. I believe like there's one bit with Freya. I haven't done this myself. Yeah. She comes in a bit earlier and there's little surprises like this that happen.
Yeah, there's not tons of things. They kind of didn't do a whole lot with it, but it's the only game in the series where they do anything like this.
Yeah.
So there are a couple changes like that where enemies are a little bit different, or like you said, Freya will come up and you fight her for a moment in a different arena, and then she retains the damage when you fight her for real, which is cool. Little things like that meant to surprise you, and then the hints that you are. The 4 kind of great souls are the same 4 from Dark Souls 1 are explicit. Mm-hmm. You get different soul items from those characters that draw the line very explicitly to the Dark Souls 1 characters. So those are the main differences that I can recall offhand. Mm-hmm. And for me, like, New Game Plus is never really appealing to me in these games because I'm not looking for just a greater challenge. Like, I want to play in a different way.
Yeah.
And it was really refreshing to have a game that actually was like, we'll add some, we'll kind of surprise you during this. We'll remix things a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's, they understood probably from the first game that people enjoyed playing it again and again. Mm-hmm. So I'm going on to Dark Souls 3. I've kind of already started it. What have I got in store for me? Is this a better game than 2? Is it as long? I hope not.
So, it's not as long. It is long. So I'm a little bit of an outlier in the community in that 3 is my least favorite.
Wow.
But that don't let that influence you because not everyone. A lot of people find 2 to be their least favorite. So to me the difference is 3 is a lot harder than 2, especially once you get to the DLCs. They're just absolutely very brutal. So just be prepared for that.
Okay.
And then for your build, and this may be difficult, so they do a weird mechanical change in 3, where instead of having, do you know like what poise is in the version?
Yeah.
Instead of having poise, you have some hyper armor associated with your weapon.
Okay.
So if you're wearing big armor, it will reduce the amount of damage you take, but it won't give you poise. So you can still be interrupted by very small attacks. The way that you avoid getting interrupted is by using a huge weapon. So just make sure you're using a huge, fuck-off weapon, and if you don't want to move slowly because you're getting interrupted too much, armor is a little bit less important. It only stops you from taking damage. It does not stop your attacks from being interrupted.
Okay, that's good to know.
So, and it's story-wise, it is all very explicit in its connections to Dark Souls 1. It's much more like a direct sequel to 1.
Okay.
So go into it expecting that. I went into it expecting it to be, I thought, because we had Demon Souls, which is a whole different world. We had Dark Souls 1, which is a whole different world. We had Dark Souls 2, which is a whole different world. I was going into Dark Souls 3 expecting it to be, just a new set of things. But there are a lot of callbacks, which rubbed me the wrong way, but your mileage will definitely vary. And it's a really good game. It feels good in the hands. Like, you move really quickly. The controls are really tight. The hitboxes on things are very accurate. It's a really, really polished game.
Nice.
Much more polished than 2, for sure.
Okay. Well, I am looking forward to busting some more of that out. The problem is I haven't it's been a couple of weeks since I did the initial bit, and it's one of those things with Dark Souls I find is that you can't leave too much of a gap, or otherwise you're just like, what am I doing? Like,
yeah.
Where am I going?
It's hard to. Some video games do that, where when you start them, it'll give you the story so far as an optional thing.
Mm.
Kind of like how trade paperbacks will do for comics.
Yeah.
They'll tell you what. And I always welcome that. Like, there's 2 things I've learned that I always want in a video game is 1, something that reminds me where I was in case I put it down, and 2, the ability to respec.
Yeah.
I want both those things very much.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It's no bad thing. So that's basically it. So tell us, where people can find you, what you're doing now, what we can look forward to.
Yeah. So you can find all of my podcasts at duckfeed.tv, including, for listeners of this episode, Bonfireside Chat. The show, we've started doing new episodes on Sekiro, but those are part of our Patreon. So if you patronize us at $5 a month, you get all of those. And that's at patreon.com/duckfeedtv. If you happen to be in the Pacific Northwest, we're throwing our first festival. So if you go to duckfeed.tv/duckfest, you can find some information. We're doing a whole day of podcast in Portland, Oregon, in the U.S. $15. We're doing all of our shows live, some guest shows. There'll be music. There will be, a teen taking tickets at the door. Everything you want to see. It's going to be a really good time. So I encourage you to check that out.
Great, thank you. And you can obviously check our stuff out still. We're on Instagram now at A New Winter, Twitter A New Winter. You can go to patreon.com/A New Winter and have a look at some of the stuff up there. And that's it. Thanks very much for listening. And how do you normally end your one with it?
Umbasa.
Umbasa, that's it.
Yeah, which is from Demon Souls, which someday.
One day.
You'll get that reference.
I will understand what that means. But until that time, Umbasa.
Umbasa.